afternoon and welcome to the final event of Hack the Planet 2021. I'm Lucy Edge, the Chief Operating Officer at the Satellite Applications Catapult. In April this year, we launched the first ever Hack the Planet competition in response to global events and the need for decisive action on some of the major challenges of our generation. Here, the Catapult, and along with our colleagues at the Commonwealth Secretariat, we launched a search for the best ideas from around the world to solve the challenges faced by our ocean using the power of data from satellites. The culmination of that search is what you will see today. The ideas are a remarkable testament to how deeply our collective passion for our ocean is felt and how that passion is impervious to any differences we may be able to mention between ourselves. We are joined today by our amazing finalists, as well as by representatives from Deloitte, Amazon Web Services, Maxar and Planet Labs, who have been working with us throughout the competition to make the first ever Hack the Planet such a great success. And as well, an exciting panel of judges, on which more later. The ocean and the climate emergencies are without question the biggest problems of our time. With representatives of the world's nations gathering in Glasgow in just 3 weeks' time for COP26, the global lens is focused on the commitments they will make to address the climate emergency. But while policy and targets are set in Glasgow, London, Paris, Mumbai, Washington, Beijing, the impacts on real people in every corner of the planet continue to increase. We as citizens can and must act on the best ideas and initiatives to see long-lasting change for the better. Through Hack the Planet, we want to enable real action from real people, coming together to develop ideas based on real-life challenges, no matter where in the world you call home. If we've ignited the spark of just one idea which leads to real change, our work on this competition will have been worthwhile. And we're so lucky to have a very broad range of entries, from as far afield as Trinidad and Tobago, Malaysia, Nigeria, the Gambia, and the UK. A competition with a truly global outlook, building on very local life experiences. Over the course of the competition, we have met teams working on an incredible set of challenges, covering mangrove management and protection, ocean plastics, and marine protected areas, to name just a few. All of the applications showed understanding of the possibilities that satellite data adds to the solution of these problems. Whether we're looking at vast areas of ocean, monitoring marine vessels, or delivering connectivity at sea, there are no other technologies that can provide the same solution. And it's competitions like Hack the Planet which really help encourage new and innovative thinking in these areas. 6 months ago, we started with over 80 entries, with a wealth of enthusiasm and some great ideas. Our team of judges reduced that to 30 teams who engaged in a comprehensive virtual program of knowledge exchange over the summer. There have been so many good ideas, and all the teams, whether you're in the final today or not, have shown such dedication and commitment. You're all great role models for your local communities and for the global community. So please continue to develop your ideas and take them forward. So here we are with 6 finalists ready to pitch to our panel of expert judges to see who will win Hack the Planet 2021. I want to say a huge thank you to our finalists, our entrants, our sponsors, our judges, and our colleagues. It's been a challenging journey, but all of the best ones are. We hope that you've taken as much out of the competition in new knowledge and opportunities for collaboration as you have put into it. Wishing you the very best of luck. And now, may I introduce the Secretary General of the Commonwealth of Nations, the Right Honourable Baroness Patricia Scotland.
Greetings, everyone. It's good to have this opportunity of sharing some thoughts and perspectives with you as you connect to hear more about our Hack the Planet finalists. For the Commonwealth collectively, and for our nations individually, and the people who live in them, the ocean and climate are of immense importance and increasing concern. The ocean sustains life on Earth, yet remains perhaps the most undervalued, under-researched and recklessly exploited of our natural resources. 47 of our 54 member countries have a coastline, including 25 which are categorised as small island developing states. No country or community in our Commonwealth family is unaffected by the consequences of climate change, although the lives and livelihoods of people living in ocean-reliant economies tend to be disproportionately affected. As we now plan for recovery and rebuilding from the ravages of the pandemic, there are exceptional opportunities to reassess and reorientate priorities to reset our relationship with the ocean. To do so, we need to agree and implement decisive, joined-up, cooperative, multilateral action. Already, heads of government of all our member governments have made important and far-reaching commitments by 3 years ago adopting the Commonwealth Blue Charter, recognising in this historic accord that the problems we face cannot be solved by nations acting alone. Governments join together in Blue Charter action groups to focus on tackling specific priorities. 16 countries have already stepped forward to lead multilateral Commonwealth cooperation by 10 action groups on sustainable ocean development and conservation. The Hack the Planet competition is another example of Commonwealth cooperation on innovative and practical action. And indeed, I feel sure that many of the ideas being presented today will be of great interest and value for Blue Charter action groups and for engagement by our member nations more widely on climate action. The competition was launched on Earth Day in April this year. In the 5 months since, we at the Commonwealth Secretariat, in partnership with Satellite Applications Catapult, have selected 30 promising applications. We have worked with these entrants through intensive knowledge exchange sessions to shape and hone these ideas into winning concepts. Today, you will hear about the innovative ideas of 6 inspiring finalists have for pioneering solutions to tackle the climate emergency and threats to ocean health and sustainability. Now, more than ever, we need the brightest and best of such Commonwealth inventiveness and imagination to devise and deliver ways of rebuilding resilience and removing the threats to the ocean and the climate, which could so easily overwhelm vulnerable communities. To achieve the targets of Sustainable Development Goal 14, we need, through innovation and by building consensus, to accelerate inclusive multilateral action to implement transformational change. Our goal for this competition is to help all those we serve and with whom we work to accomplish that, particularly through the immense potential of Commonwealth connection and cooperation. In commending the 6 finalists, I trust all who submitted entries and the many other innovative thinkers and budding inventors will draw fresh inspiration as we work together on opening up new possibilities to protect our planet and to preserve the resources on which we all depend.
Thank you very much to Lucy Edge and to Baroness Scotland for those words of opening and introduction to the competition. It's certainly true that we've had a very exciting almost 6 months of Hack the Planet, and it's wonderful to be here today at the final event with all of our finalists to hear about the work that they've been doing and to choose our winners. My name is Tim Pinchin and I'm Head of Marketing and Communications at the Satellite Applications Catapult, and I'm going to be helping us steer us through the event today. But before we meet the judges and get started with the pitches from our finalists, we've got an extra message to share with you all from Will Marshall, the co-founder and CEO of Planet. So let's hear that one now.
Hey everyone, this is Will Marshall, CEO of Planet. Sorry I can't be there to help judge today, but really inspired and excited by what you're all doing there at Hack the Planet. Obviously, Planet, our company, was founded on innovating on the satellites to create these new data sets like the daily scan of the Earth to help people like yourselves, entrepreneurs, to use that data to solve some of the biggest challenges. This revolution in Earth observation data couldn't have happened soon enough. The world is, of course, in a climate emergency, a biodiversity loss situation. We need to take care of it. I love the fact that this hackathon is focused on those kind of problems and especially around biodiversity in the oceans. Good luck. We hope that the Planet data helps and the other Earth observation data that you're using can really make a big and meaningful difference on the world. Good luck to all the participants that have come and helped this from all around the world, and yeah, good luck with your competition today.
Well, thank you very much for that, Will. And before we turn our focus onto the teams, it's my great pleasure now to be able to introduce you to our panel of expert judges for Hack the Planet 2021, who have very kindly given their time today to help us judge, well, today and before the event today, to judge the final entries in the competition and to select our winners. So here on the screen, you can see our panel of judges. I'm just going to turn to each one of you in turn and just ask you to say a very few words about yourself. So in the order that you are on the screen, Angelique Braithwaite is co-founder of Blue Finance. Angelique, if you'd just like to say a few words in introduction, please.
Hi, happy to be here. I'm a marine biologist at heart, and I work with an NGO that looks at sustainable financing for marine protected areas. So I'm especially excited and interested to hear these different pitches. I'm sure it's going to help us.
Thank you, Angelique. That's brilliant. And next, over to Chris Garbanz. Chris is very kindly also chairing our judges today, and we'll be hearing from him a little bit later on with the results. So, Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Tim, and thanks for putting on this very important event. I am the co-founder of the Blue Marine Foundation, which is a marine NGO, and I'm also the founding partner of Ocean 14 Capital, which is an impact fund where we are channeling the necessary capital to try and improve the existing industry within the ocean to drive sustainability and, of course, returns for investors.
Thank you, Chris. That's wonderful. And next we have Andrew Zolly, who is a Chief Impact Officer at Planet.
Hi, everyone. It's terrific to participate in this really exciting competition and thrilled to participate as a judge today. As was mentioned, I'm the Chief Impact Officer at Planet. I oversee our work in sustainable development writ large, our work on the SDGs, our expansive work on the oceans. Planet has done and committed very significantly to things like mapping all the world's coral reefs, to enabling illegal fishing detection, and we couldn't be more excited to look at and explore these extraordinary new proposed innovations for improving our ocean's health. So it's great to be with you today.
Thank you, Andrew. Next we have Phil Cooper, who's Regional Manager for EMEA for Aerospace and Satellite Solutions at Amazon Web Services. Phil?
Yeah, hi, Tim. Really, really excited to be joining you all today. From Amazon Web Services, obviously a cloud organization. We are committed to our customers, and we're seeing so much excitement and so much activity in the aerospace and satellite solutions arena at the moment. Really looking forward to seeing more from how organizations are looking to manage the huge amounts of data that are becoming available from organizations like Planet and the European Space Agency and so many providers today. And already the work that we've done and seen has been impressive, hugely impressive, and obviously very excited to hear more about what the organizations want to do going forward. And yeah. Looking forward to it from a virtual environment today, which we are all in. It'd be lovely if we were doing this in person, perhaps one day.
Yes, that's right, Phil. Thank you very much. And then finally on to Laura Bentz, who's Director of Programmes at Second News. Laura.
Thanks, Tim. And I think to echo all the fellow judges here, really excited to be participating today and really looking forward to the next couple of hours. So I'm the Programs Director at Second News. Second News is a consultancy based in the US, but our flagship program in Asia, South and Southeast Asia, it's called the Incubation Network. So what we do is focus on reducing ocean plastic and ocean plastic pollution by looking at waste management and recycling systems across the region. We do that through working with entrepreneurs, financial and technical assistance, and really trying to empower the ecosystem. So all these other players, we've got corporates, we've got governments, we've got civil society, women's rights organizations, innovators, right across the board. So what we do is try and bring all those pieces of the puzzle together. So really looking forward to exploring that with some of the entrepreneurs that we're going to be speaking to today.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Laura. So thank you very much to all of you for your introductions. It's wonderful to be joined by such a highly experienced team of judges for the first ever Hack the Planet competition. So without further ado, it's time to start the pitches from our finalists. We have 6 teams participating for the crown of Hack the Planet Champion 2021, and their ideas cover a range of topics, from ocean plastics to illegal fishing, from monitoring marine animals and to marine protected areas. The format of the pitches is really very simple. Each team has 10 minutes to deliver their pitch, and that will be followed by a 5-minute live question and answer session with our judges today. And I'm going to very briefly introduce the teams as we go through. So firstly, we have Terangi team, which is an entry from Malaysia, and from a gentleman named Safran Uzri, who's here today. This is a wide-reaching idea that aims to deliver a toolbox of important environmental monitoring capabilities in a single technology platform. And with that, I will let Safran present his idea. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, I'm Safran from the Terangi team, and I'm with my team, Chakra.
Hello.
Iana.
Hi.
And Fahru Rozi.
Hello.
I'm presenting our solution, the MARTA Toolbox, or Marine Spatial Prioritization and Habitat Analysis Toolbox. Our ocean is in crisis due to illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, pollution, coastal development, and climate change. But conserving marine ecosystem is difficult. Conservation practitioners have to struggle with limited resources such as funding, time, and personnel. They need to prioritize location, configuration, and action to support conservation. Therefore, in conservation planning and management, spatial prioritization become important. The problem is, spatial prioritization is exhaustive and time-consuming. There are 3 stages required. The first one is providing input files, which include conservation targets, threats, costs, and constraints. This step alone requires 60% of the time. The second one is analysis using software. Since software such as Marsan, Zonation, Class, and Prioritizer exist, this step is usually very straightforward and only requires around 10% of the time. The most important step is step 3, discussing the output. This step includes result interpretation and discussion with target audience. While it is the most important step to get stakeholder support, this step usually only get allocation of 30% of the time. As you can see here, spatial prioritization takes into account various variables from environmental dataset, species, ecosystem services, threats, costs, and current plan. Therefore, we proposed the MARTA Toolbox, or Marine Spatial Prioritization and Habitat Analysis Toolbox. It will be used to help conservation input files for marine spatial prioritization using available data and information from the cloud and machine learning. It is a cloud-based tool, so no downloads and no install required. It will focus on conservation and saves time and resources since data source and scientific workflows are integrated and pre-built in the toolbox. This toolbox is for conservation practitioners and people interested in conservation, such as researchers, cartographers, and investors in conservation, anyone working with the community-based conservation efforts, and the methodology itself can also be applied for spatial planners, development organizations, private sectors, and many others. This toolbox will include cloud-based GIS and remote sensing tools to provide input for systematic conservation planning. a step-by-step wizard to implement spatial prioritization as a part of systematic conservation planning, community support, customer support, and possibility to be integrated into existing conservation projects. It will also have pre-built algorithm where proven scientific workflows will be coded within the toolbox, hence automating most of the process. Resources which includes examples, templates, and technical guides for user to get started or enhance existing spatial plan will also be provided. A step-by-step wizard will be included in each toolbox, where each data will be ready to download after 3 steps. This is an example for spatial data and information generated using machine learning. At first, you do is select the conservation target and area of interest. Afterwards, add your ground truth data and click Analyze after finish. And voila, your data is ready to be downloaded. In the background, each toolbox will have scientific workflows pre-built inside, so users do not need to code anything. As you can see here, this is the common workflow for supervised classification with machine learning. There will also be pre-built algorithm for specific tasks. Aside from machine learning, mangroves can also be detected using algorithm. This is the example, the workflow to detect mangrove using mangrove vegetation index. The workflows come from scientific paper, such as MVI or Mangrove Vegetation Index shown here. It is developed by Balolai et al. And have been used to develop the Philippines National Mangrove Atlas. Each feature will also include conservation targets, such as benthic habitat and mangroves from Landsat and Sentinel images. User will be able to choose the method generated the data, such as machine learning or mangrove indices. Adaptive climate management will also require climate change monitoring, and users can monitor their area for sea surface temperature, land surface temperature, and coastline changes. The data will be based on imageries from MODIS Aqua, Landsat, and Sentinel. Aside from climate change, water quality monitoring will also be provided, which include chlorophyll A from MODIS Aqua and salinity from HYCOM. Most of the solutions out there are focusing on the provision of biophysical data layers. Rarely one produce threats and cost layer, even though it is crucial in the MPA planning and development process. In the toolbox, we provide estimation of maintenance cost layer where we took consideration of distance from management unit's location. Acquisition cost by providing land use land cover map where we took consideration that certain type of land use will be more valuable than the others. Opportunity and damage costs through identification of offshore fishing intensity with fierce nighttime light, vessel aggregation site, fish cages, and ship lanes for either fishing, tourism, or transportation using radar, and identification of fish-prone ponds with object-based image analysis from Landsat and Sentinel images. For conservation practitioners, this toolbox will save time on generating input, so they can focus on what matters most, gaining stakeholder support. User can also scale their analysis according to their need. It can also be used in other spatial modeling research, such as species distribution modeling. We propose 4 types of business model. The free tools will be available for users to support their conservation needs and including community support, while the premium users can use higher resolution images from Planet and get customer support. We are also open for project integration with profit or not-for-profit organization and governmental institution by providing dashboard for selected variables with all the premium features and the possibility to integrate with project's website and rebranding. For a user focusing only to a certain aspect or location in protected areas, we also offer the I only have a minute model, where we can develop dashboard based on the selected features requested. While there are others providing part of the features, the Mata Toolbox are a specialized toolbox for providing input for spatial prioritization process, which focuses on convenience and affordability. The phase 1 will be done from January to December 2022, which focus on designing, developing minimum viable product and a case study, while phase 2 will focus on implementing the toolbox in the Coral Triangle, especially the Sulu-Sulawesi marine ecoregion, including some part of Malaysia, the Philippines, and Indonesia. Phase 3 will start from June 2023 with the focus on developing best practices of implementing Martha Toolbox to support marine protected area planning, development, monitoring, and evaluation. This is the timeline of our 2-year action plan, where the MVP is expected to be released in June 2022, and case studies will be done in October 2022. Implementation in Coral Triangle will be done in January 2023. The initial funding will be from the prize money from Hack the Planet. We also hope to get Amazon Cloud Credit from Amazon and Planet for high resolution images. But the biggest funding will be from project collaboration between international programs, countries cooperation, and local government. Most of the features are confirmed that they can be built with Google Earth Engine. Experiment is currently ongoing with AWS and Planet. The scientific workflow is currently being tested to support the development of Raja Ampat Marine National Park as the first case study. So this is the team. We are a group of conservation hackers which have knowledge and passion in marine conservation and skills in information technology. I am Safran Yusri, the team leader, with my team, Fahru Rozi, Chakra, and Nurdiana. Thank you very much for your attention, and we appreciate any question, inputs, and critics.
Great. Thank you very much. One quick question. Why is it called Martha's Toolbox?
Well, it's quite catchy, and it encompasses all of what we have already done to support marine conservation. So it focuses on marine and coastal and spatial prioritization, and it is a set of toolbox to support all of those functions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Has anybody got any questions before I ask a few more? Yeah, Phil.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, fantastic presentation, Safran. Thank you very much. I thought that was very clear. Could I just ask you, what do you see the biggest challenge technically going forward for the project? What is it that you see as being that you need the most support and help with?
Okay, I think the most challenging technologically is integrating several APIs such as Google Earth Engine, Planet, and AWS that requires technical expertise and also case studies, especially in marine conservation. Thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions at this point?
Yeah, I do. Who do you? I think it's fantastic, and for somebody like me with ArcGIS, I think it's completely confusing. I think it would be perfect for someone like me. But who do you see that would buy your premium product? The free products, yes, and most conservation agencies don't have a lot of money. Most governments don't either. Who would buy your premium products?
Okay, usually the one who buy our premium product mostly from the private sector, but actually our project collaboration will be our main source of sustainable financing. So in this Hack Planet competition, as a token of courtesy, I am inviting all of participants and viewers and also the judges of Hack the Planet to collaborate and implement Martha Toolbox to support marine conservation wherever you are. We can develop together, and I'm looking forward to start an international program.
Where will you get all the necessary developers from? So you've got a team of 4, I think you presented to us. In terms of the actual dev that needs to be done, is that something that you'll do locally? Do you have access to the necessary talent for that? You know, how will you go about hiring that? Will it be Is that something that have you got a relationship with a tech outsource company?
It will be mainly our team that will be developing the toolbox, but we are currently discussing with several, especially NGOs and also governmental programs in the Coral Triangle. So we are planning to get their support, not only in terms of the project itself, but also in terms of knowledge, expertise, and also a lot of political support.
Okay.
Chris, I'd like to ask a question, if I may. Saffron, thank you for this wonderful presentation. You're presenting, this is a big project with lots of moving parts. If you had to pick a single use case to focus on, a single circumstance with a particular user that you're trying to aid, what is the most important use of this system out of the box?
Okay, I think the most important is the development of threat cost layer. Since most of the solutions out there only focusing on biophysical layers.
Mm-hmm.
So the threat cost should be prioritized, I think.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Does any of the other judges have any other questions? No. Okay. Thank you very much for that. I echo the other judges. I think it's an excellent presentation. I think it's a big ambition. There's certainly a lot to do to be able to fulfill that. Just one other question? Did you? I don't know if I missed it, but was there a link to tracking IUU fishing with onboard monitoring that would go into that? Was there?
No. We're going to detect We're going to detect ship aggregation using radar, and also offshore fishing using FIRS. So we don't use onboard monitoring because it's already available from Global Fishing Watch.
And Saffron, before we go, could you just tell us your background?
I have a unique background. I have a background both in biology and information technology.
Right, okay, fantastic, brilliant. Well, congratulations and thank you very much for what a brilliant and important vision. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Well done. Do we now have a breakout, or Tim?
It's back to me, Chris.
Okay.
Yes, sorry, my I just froze for a moment on my end, but I'm back. So there we go. So next we're moving. So thank you, Saffron, very much for that pitch, and then we will move on to our next pitch. And the next pitch comes from James Doherty and Dr. Lauren Bierman, and it's called Plastic Eye: Mapping Ocean Plastics from Space. And this is a solution that's looking to combine data from multiple high-resolution Earth observation satellite constellations and combining that with machine learning to create this highly specific map of floating ocean plastic, which will be offered open source and updated daily. So over to you, James and Lauren.
Hi there, I'm James, and I'm going to be presenting with Lauren today.
Hi.
And we'll be introducing Plastic Eye, which is a tool for mapping ocean plastics with satellites. This is a collaboration between Oxlabs, an SME based in Oxfordshire, and Plymouth Marine Laboratory. We're going to begin the presentation today with a bit of a provocation, and that is to say that plastic is awesome. Now, this is really because of the properties which it possesses. It can be molded into pretty much any shape. It is lightweight, durable, flexible, and inexpensive to make. And that's why it is used so widely, from food packaging to aviation, transport, construction, consumer electronics, and of course, very pertinently, in medical devices. However, those properties that make plastic such a useful substance also make it extremely problematic. And to outline the problem with plastics, I can say that of the 380 million tons of plastics which are manufactured each year, 8 million tons of that enters into the ocean, mainly via rivers. Now, those plastics, they don't biodegrade, but they do break down into smaller pieces. They get carried by currents around the world. They enter the food chain with fish mistaking them as food, and they end up back on our dinner plates. And it is estimated that we all eat a credit card's worth of plastic per week. Yummy. Now, if we continue to make plastic at the same rates which we currently do make it, there's going to be more fish by volume in the ocean than plastic by 2050. Now, this is such a big problem that we can't, there's no single solution to it at this point. But what we're offering today is a tool which will be able to better understand the problem so that we can all come up with better solutions. I'm going to pass over to Laura now to describe what that tool is.
Thank you, James. So what we're proposing through Plastic Eye is delivery of a unique interactive global map of floating plastics, which can be updated on near real-time scales. To do this, we'll be combining data from multiple high-resolution satellites that are in constellation and orbiting our planet right now. And of course, we will be applying proprietary deep learning algorithms as well as novel indices to not just detect, but also accurately classify different types of debris. And the way that we do that is by combining a number of optical and also radar satellites that exist at the moment and are also being updated all of the time. We move the data from these satellites into our data lake, which is James's part of the work, and through Amazon and web services, we're able to access that data and move it to my part, which will be an automated processing chain. And this is where I've spent the last 3 years of my research career working on everything from atmospheric effects to the floating debris index and classification through machine learning. And then, of course, we will generate maps, which will look something like this. So this is our concept map, and this is what we will be delivering. And what you will be able to see on maps like these are hotspots of plastics and other forms of floating debris, as well as other novel, but also interesting and pertinent things like the signals of vessels through their AIS and even potentially the locations of ghost nets. We have international collaborators who believe in Plastic Eye as much as we do. And these include my former employer, CFAS, who are the Centre for Environment, Fisheries and Aquaculture Science for the UK, Common Seas, based in Greece, Indonesia and the Maldives, as well as our fellow finalist, Loop Recyclers Tech Limited, who are based in Nigeria. And finally, a company that's close to my heart because we've been working really hard together in Vietnam, Plastic Fisher, who are also doing excellent work in Indonesia and India. I also used to lead the marine portfolio for the DEFRA Earth Observation Centre of Excellence, so it brings me great joy to be able to repeat James Clark's words. He's program lead for the International Blue Finance and Marine and Fisheries sector. And he said that I need to build policy around reliable, actionable data so that he can better spend their £500 million Blue Planet Fund on interventions that most effectively protect the marine environment. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're offering reliable and actionable data. Over to you, James.
Thanks very much, Lauren. So James Clark is just one of many potential users who we have spoken to throughout the course of Hack the Planet. And speaking to those users and hearing their stories have helped us to define our value proposition. That is, and it is that Plastic Eye will provide the most comprehensive, high-resolution, actionable data source on floating plastic debris and plastics. Plastic Eye will help stakeholders make informed decisions and interventions and hold polluters to account. And the real market opportunity which we see here is that existing platforms do not map floating plastics. So this means that we will be able to provide completely novel insights across a whole range of sectors. And we see our early adopters being organizations such as DEFRA and Common-Seas, and we will work in partnership with them to ensure that we're building products and providing services which are of use. When we look at the competition and other platforms in existence, what we see we can really add value is that we will be imaging plastics, our platform will be fully deployed, and it will of course be powered by proprietary deep learning algorithms. In terms of all important income sources, we'll see certainly in the early stages, grants and donations will be extremely important to get traction and to get this project off the ground. Secondly, value-added service. So we will be the world leading experts on floating plastics and plastic debris. So we see that we will be able to add a lot of value to people's businesses there. And also, of course, software as a service, if organizations would like to incorporate our software into their own company infrastructures. This is our route to market, and the takeaway point from this slide is that by next summer, we hope to have a minimum viable product and MVP ready to launch. Some of the key steps on that journey will be to get the right expertise into place, build a proof of concept, which we should be able to do off the back of Hack the Planet, undertake user-centered studies, negotiate access to the data which we require, work in partnership with AWS to build our data architecture, and then of course, work with a developer to build our platform. And do we have the team to deliver this? Yeah, we certainly think we do. Lauren, who you've heard from, is an EO scientist and is the world leading expert on imaging floating plastic debris. Her skill set will be complemented by Dr. Donal Hill. He is a particle physicist at CERN and a deep learning and AI expert. Mike Lauten is the UK's leading space entrepreneur. He was the founder of Oxford Space Systems and the Barclays Bank Entrepreneur of the Year 2018, and he has a wealth of business experience to call upon. Myself, I have a background in astrophysics and commercial data science. I'm a qualified lawyer, and I have a lot of energy and passion to deliver this project and make it a success. So what will winning Hack the Planet mean for us? Well, it will be absolutely transformational for Oxlabs. Because we are an early stage startup, it will really give us access to the imagery and resources which we need to build a proof of concept of Plastic Eye. It'll provide all important funding to pay for the EO and development expertise we require. It'll raise the profile of Oxlabs and Plastic Eye as a project, providing excellent networking and profile raising opportunities, and of course, credentializing this project to potential investors. And perhaps most importantly, it will give us the joy and privilege of bringing Plastic Eye, a tool which we believe can really make a difference to a global market. So we'd like to conclude there and say a big thank you to the organizers, to the sponsors, and to all the other companies who have really contributed to the substance of our presentation today. And if anybody would like to get in touch with us, our details are here. We'd just like to say thank you, and we'll be happy to take any questions on the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, James. Obviously, we know plastic is such a huge part in the ocean. I've got a couple of questions. So I can see how the product identifies the plastic, but you didn't talk very much about how you would collaborate with or link to two things. One is sort of collecting it once you've identified it, and then stopping it getting into the ocean. Is that something that you've considered? And then the other question is, you mentioned that you'd be able to hold those to account. How are you going to be identifying, where that plastic comes from, who's responsible for it being in the ocean, and then what's the what's the route to holding those, whether it's an organisation or a government, to account for the pollution?
Sure. Thanks, Chris. In terms of the collection, are you referring to the plastic itself, or the data, the plastic itself? Cool. Yeah. So obviously there's existing projects out there that are collecting plastic. So probably the ocean cleanup is the most notable. Plastic Fisher as well, who were a competitor in Hack the Planet, and they use kind of boom-like structures which they put into rivers to collect plastics in. So there's obviously people out there working on technologies. Part of what we haven't presented today is we are also exploring opportunities to use drones for collecting plastic. So drones armed with machine vision and specialized grabbers. So that's another project we're working on, kind of as part of this. And indeed, Mike, who's part of the team, has interesting background in developing drone usage as well. So there's certainly projects out there doing that. It's something we're also working on. But I think what we can offer to projects is, we can tell them where the most polluting rivers are. And I think it's well known there's 10 extremely polluting rivers, but there's plenty of others out there to identify as well. We can help identify where best to place interventions in those rivers, and then we can help to quantify how successful that intervention's been. Of course, they'll be able to see how much plastic they've collected in themselves, but we will also then hopefully be able to say, okay, we see lower volumes of plastic then entering the ocean and accumulating in the hotspots from that particular river. So that's where we think we can feed in there.
James, can I add, if I may?
Absolutely.
Chris, I think that's an excellent question. So I'm already as well working with organizations within the North Pacific Gyre and within some of the polluted rivers within Southeast Asia. And one of the things that's really lacking is information on where the plastics are, what their dynamics are, what their patterns are in space and in time. And so we're already trying to provide this information on an ad hoc basis as scientists with very little resource. And something like Plastic Eye would be able to really lift what we're doing and make it more reproducible. So we're not just working with point examples and one organization at a time. So I feel like this would really take the data and the services that we could provide to a whole new level. The second thing that James was alluding to was sometimes it's really good to lead with good news stories. And by using the satellite data, we can also go back in time. These satellites have been collecting data for several years already. And we can go back in time and say, actually, this country has reduced plastic trade with the States or with Europe. They've changed the waste management strategies on land, and we're actually seeing a reduction in plastics in their rivers and in their coastal waters, thanks to this. And lead with good news stories. You talk about holding governments to account, but actually there's a lot of power in showing leadership through positive changes already, and being able to quantify them and show them off to the rest of the world.
Just one question from me, if I can.
Go on.
Thank you. So just a question on accessibility. I think you've shared with us about how you could see other actors also collaborating with you in order for you to address the issue of collection, for example. I'm not sure the question on accountability and holding people to account has necessarily been fully addressed, so I would be really interested in hearing more about that. But also accessibility, is this something that would be accessible to grassroots organizations who work with watersheds and water communities? Or is this something that we see more as for more of sort of big tech companies who can partner with you on that? I'm very keen to hear how that could work. Thank you.
Okay.
You clear on those questions, James?
Yeah, apologies. I did have a bit of my bandwidth just cut out slightly there. So Angelique, if you could just repeat the kind of latter part of your question, that would be great, please.
Sure. So the latter part was with regards to accessibility of your platform. So how do grassroots organizations are also able to engage with your platforms? Because we know there are, people around these rivers, so watershed communities. How are they going to be able to also participate in using this platform, or is it not designed for them and it is intended that it would be through technology companies collaborating, as you've mentioned a few of sort of drones with able to collect and so on. I mean, looking at it from, can we stop it from getting too far at sea before it gets there?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. And apologies for the background noise from my daughters. Yeah, so this is, the tool is being designed to be an open source, open access tool. So we wish to, take the data which is accessible, from resources like Sentinel-2 and All Being Well from Planet, and to make this an open source map which people are able to access, able to use that data. And we also want this data to be available in, the lowest common denominator, common file source as well. So, we want to be producing CSV files, etc., which people can take away themselves and use. Probably as business cases, data which is higher resolution is going to be more expensive for us to obtain. Then that's probably going to be, we will need, that will be then a commercial kind of use case then, we will need, people paying for that commercially to do that. But we do plan to provide this open source kind of platform as well.
And if I may,
oh yeah, please go ahead, Lauren.
No, I was very, very briefly going to say, Angelique, it is something really important as well, being able to provide data on a platform that makes it easy to use. So for example, for me to access a single image from Sentinel-2, I have to be able to download a very big file. I have to have the speciality to be able to process it in order to tease out the signal that is debris and what is natural materials. And we're trying to remove that burden of expertise so that these maps are able to be used rapidly and without that need of technical expertise. So that grassroots organizations that you're talking about can actually utilize that data in very quick, rapid and meaningful ways, either in response to things or just for, general monitoring purposes.
Thank you.
If I may follow up on that question.
And I'm happy to pick.
Go on, Andrew, do you want to ask the question?
Sure, thank you. Sorry about that. This is really a couple of questions for Lauren. They're on the how of the detection of surface level macroplastics. And if you could quantify with a little bit greater detail what volumes of surface level plastics and at what levels of accuracy are you able to detect? And I'd be curious also about what specific characteristics of the imagery are you using when you're processing the latent signal of surface level plastics? Is it a morphological signal? Is it are you using particular?
It's optical. Yeah, so it's optical. So we're using a lot of planet data at the moment, particularly in the Saigon River, because of the very high spatial resolution. But the band resolution from WorldView 2 and 3 are also sufficient for actually detecting almost flip-flop or single polystyrene containers within hyacinth patches that are being transported downstream. We're presenting on this work very soon, and I'm hoping to have it published very soon as well. Use of Sentinel-2 is obviously more effective in the coastal zone, where we have sub-mesoscale features that group the floating debris into patches, often mixed with seaweed or sea foam, but we leverage information in the near infrared, the red edge and the shortwave infrared to help us detect those plastics. And then I have a trained data set. Obviously it's not as big as hundreds of thousands of data points, but it is, which is why we use a naive Bayes machine learning approach right now. But Plastic Eye will certainly elevate that, I'm sure. And we use that to be able to then discriminate the type of debris that we've detected. So it's an incredibly intensive process and something I've been working on for the last 3 years. But one of the things that's great is now Acolyte works just as well on Worldview as it does on Sentinel. And so we're able to sort of table a lot of our processes and make them a lot more reproducible across sensors.
Great. I've got to wrap up on this one. Could you just give me 20 seconds, quickly, what's the revenue model?
Yes, certainly. So
20 seconds, literally.
Okay, cool. Yeah, as I kind of highlighted, we're we're looking at those kind of three sources of revenue in the first number of years. I think having this as a service added, or a value added service, sorry, is really going to be our focus on where we want to take this. And in terms of revenue growth, we're looking at very strong growth between year 1 and 2. So we're looking at something like 300%. And then seeing that, gradually level off then over the subsequent 4 years. But we're looking to really hit the ground running in the next year on that.
Okay. Thanks very much, James and Lauren. Good presentation. Thank you very much for your time. We're going to have to move on now. Okay.
Very much.
Well done. Back to you, Tim.
Thanks, Chris. Brilliant. So the next presentation we have is from Fama Jallow from the Gambia, and it is an entry called Capella. So this is an idea which combines machine learning and satellite imagery to provide data on illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing in Africa, and also looks to address some of the challenges of ocean plastic pollution. So Fama, over to you. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Fama and I'm one of the co-founders of Capella. Today I'll be giving you a short introduction on what we do in Capella and how we're making a difference and protecting our ocean health here in Africa. The coastline of Africa stretches across 30,000 kilometers and currently is one of the most vulnerable, especially in the western side of Africa. Two of its biggest threats includes plastic pollution and IUU, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. This issue has gotten worse due to the fact that currently there's little to no data on ocean challenges in Africa. There's currently little to no African experts on the ground monitoring both IUU and plastic pollution. Also, due to IUU and plastic pollution, there's an increase in food insecurity and unemployment rate in the fishing industry, especially in Africa. Despite the numerous ocean challenges in Africa, there's a huge gender gap in the fight against issues related to ocean health in Africa. And there is where Capella comes in. Capella focuses on using both machine learning and satellite imagery to monitor both plastic pollution and IUU. We also focus on working with stakeholders and policymakers to implement policies for ocean challenges. We also focus on bridging the gender gap and lack of experts by training more individuals on issues related to ocean health and machine learning. And finally, also work with local businesses to promote plastic recycling and sustainable fishing practices. Our core team members include Betty Jahate. Betty is the program director of the GRADE Institute, the first marine and coastal science research institute in the Gambia. She's one of the pioneers of Gambia Ocean Heroes, an organization that works on tackling plastic pollution in the Gambia by organizing beach cleanup. She's also the project coordinator of the Gambia Environmental Monitoring System, the first monitoring program that collects environmental data sets along the River Gambia. And I am Fama. I am currently a final year aerospace engineering student, and I'm also a software engineering student at ALX Hamilton School in Silicon Valley. I am a recipient of the YALI African Next Emerging Leaders Fellow. I'm also the co-founder of Unitox and Afrobots. Finally, we have Bethlehem Gamma, who's an aerospace engineer and research institute at Ethiopian Space and Technology Institute. She is a recipient of the African Space Industry Top 10 Under 30 Award 2021 for her incredible work in the space sector in Africa. She's also the co-founder of Unitox and Afrobots. Our advisors include the amazing Dr. Aji, who is a research scientist at Google AI, and also the first Black female faculty member in the School of Engineering and Applied Science at Princeton University. Aji will be our machine learning advisors. Next, we have Joanne Alexander Hamilton, who's the founder and CEO of Garbanz. Joanne connects entrepreneurs from emerging markets and help them scale up their business. Joanne will be working with us to help us scale Capella. And then we have Brandon. Brandon is the program director at SOA, a global NGO that accelerates scalable ocean solutions and develops the leaders behind them. He also manages PALSEED, a funding and professional development program for innovators. Brandon will serve as our mediator between us and international organizations. And then finally, we have the Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Environment of the Gambia. He's also the project coordinator of the biosafety project in the Gambia. We'll be working closely with Alaji Manjang to enable us provide our data to the government to help them implement policies that can help us protect our oceans. The market size for both data and satellites is expected to grow in Africa in the upcoming years. Also, according to UNDP, there's a high demand for talent and experts in Africa due to the fact that currently Africa is one of the youngest continents with 60% of the population under the age of 25. And also, if we look at the market size, according to the World Bank, the fishing industry in countries like Gambia, Mauritania, Senegal, and Guinea-Bissau is expected to worth about $4.9 billion per year. Currently, our competitors includes ART, Action Map, and Latila. Although these are currently our competitors, they are also potential partners in the future. Our business model is pretty much very simple. We focus on grants, competitions, consultation, and data user fee, and training. In Capella, we believe that representation is matter, so we look forward to offering about 50 to 75 scholarships for underrepresented groups like women. Our route to market includes partnership, events, and marketing. We hope to use social media adverts to reach some of our target audience that are maybe outside of the Gambia, and also to use handbooks and the art of storytelling to target some of our customers who maybe not have the ability to be able to read and write, and perhaps also live in the rural areas. Currently, some of our partners include the Ethiopian Space Science and Technology Institute and the Space Generation Advisory Council. And in Capella, we not only believe in using technology to make a difference, but also educating, inspiring, and making a difference. We provide platforms to youth around the world to discuss and come up with solutions to some of the problems that are affecting us, especially when it comes to ocean health. So far, we have been able to conduct different events in different parts of the world and connect youths from all over the world, which includes countries like China, Ethiopia, and Uganda. The next event will be taking place in Gambia very soon. So these are some of our projections for the upcoming year. We do expect a revenue of about $50,000 within the upcoming year, and an additional 50 new members, which include our technical team and our community outreach members. We also project to train about 50 students on machine learning and ocean science, and also hold a one stakeholder workshop for local folks, and also have a biannual community training, a few networking events, and a pottery beach cleaning up event within the upcoming year. And finally, millions of individuals depend on the ocean as their source of livelihood. The ocean is essential for all life on Earth, including humans. To ensure a sustainable future, we must protect our ocean. I hope you all are excited in joining Capella in making a difference in protecting our global ocean health. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Fama. Excellent and hugely important presentation and initiative to try and track and stop IUU fishing in Africa. I've got a question, then I'll ask the other judges, but do you have a relationship with Global Fishing Watch? Obviously, they're doing quite a lot of monitoring in the area anyway. And have you reached out to them? Have you spoken to them about collaboration?
Sorry, thank you. There is where one of our advisors comes in, Brandon, who helps us kind of form those kind of relations to talk to international organizations. So we have talked to a few of them, and we're looking forward to working with some of them in the near future.
Okay, cool. Okay, thank you. Other judges, any questions, please?
Angelique here. Just a question, quick question from me. The demand for technology in Africa is obviously one that is much needed, but how are you working towards persuading governments that this is a direction that they should go in and actually spending their budgets in that way, or is that something that is already well established and you found that African governments and other relevant stakeholders already want to pursue these technological advances? What has been your experience so far in that respect?
I think so far, I think the governments are aware of that, and they're trying to come up with policies and that can help maybe like include STEM like in like our countries so far. And I think they're doing the right work, but sometimes like maybe the people with the experts that can help bring that like into action. So that's how we're working with the government so that we can work with them. For example, training more girls in machine learning and things like that. I am one of the few people like from the Gambia that is a woman and in the field of aerospace engineering. So people like me coming back, working with young girls and other people to develop the maybe next upcoming aerospace engineers and others like in a country like Gambia.
Yeah, please go ahead, Angie.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I thought it was, I mean, I'm especially happy about the emphasis you put on training and of course, training girls and women as well. I'm curious about your model in terms of financial sustainability. So you're going to start off with grants, etc. How do you plan to maintain and keep this going year by year? I don't know if Africa is anything like the Caribbean, but our governments are not really spending a lot of money in conservation. So I'm curious as to how you plan to fund this initiative.
Definitely. In the beginning, we do definitely depend on grants and maybe selling some of our data maybe to the government, but we look also maybe towards expanding into other maybe countries and more also maybe leveraging other forms of technology, maybe also including drones in our program in the near future.
Chris, I just wanted to ask a question to Fama. You mentioned in an event that you build up to the Beach Clean event. So do you drive intelligence to make that event happen? And what is that? Because that sounded really exciting. And I would have loved to learn a little bit more about what is it that you do to deliver on that? Because that's a real practical application. So could you tell us a bit more about that?
So far, we do have like few organizations that like work on beach cleanup, like one of the organization which was pioneered by one of my co-founders, Betty. But one of the problems that they deal with is like finding maybe where like concentration of plastics are actually found, like in the maybe around the river Gambia. So that is where Capella comes in, maybe giving them the information where there's like aggregates of plastic and them going towards there and maybe collecting those and finding ways to recycle those materials.
Okay. And do you hold those regular? Is that something you want to do regularly? Is that a kind of a, how often does that happen?
Yes, we do that regularly.
Okay.
I might just quickly jump in with a question that relates to a few of the ones you've already been asked, Fama. But I also really love your approach and very kind of holistic view, bringing in, events, bringing in advocacy work, bringing in partnerships, key partnerships on the ground. For me, I'm really keen to know, when we talked about business model, there was the membership. I think you showed 15 members that you're hoping to get in the upcoming year. I'm keen to know who they are. Are they governments? Are they private sector? Just really keen to understand that member prototype or member profile, sorry.
Yes, definitely. Some of them do include people from the government, but mostly it will consist of young people like us who are passionate about the ocean and maybe have the technical expertise, maybe are into artificial intelligence or into outreach work. And some of them we have already worked with them maybe in the like beach cleanups we held in the Gambia.
Okay, great. Has anyone else got any other questions? Don't think so. Okay, thank you very much for that. That was excellent, hugely important. Well done. Thank you very much. Over to you, Tim.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Fama. That was wonderful. So up next, we have Amanda Mathers with a solution which is called Marine Wildlife Tracking with Snapper GPS. And this is a really interesting novel solution, which is going to change the way that conservationists monitor marine animals. So it looks at animals which only spend short periods of time at the surface of the ocean and are therefore usually difficult to track. So Amanda, over to you.
Thank you so much for this invitation. If you have listened to my semi-final pitch, much of this will be familiar, but hopefully it won't be boring for you. My name is Amanda Mattis, and I'm here to tell you about Snapper GPS and how I think it could have a huge impact on marine wildlife tracking. We're currently living through a sixth mass extinction event, with species disappearing across the board at an unprecedented rate. This plot is from a 2015 study in Science Advances. It shows extinction rates since 1500. And what we can see is that recent extinction rates have massively exceeded the historical background rate. And this is not even showing the dramatic decimation in population size that many species are currently facing. So what can we do about this? The way forward is going to have to be effective policy decisions to protect habitats, to stop overhunting and overfishing, and to direct funds to species and habitats most at risk. But those policy decisions need evidence. Conservation needs evidence, and evidence needs data. And one of the most important types of data for conservation work is location tracking data, because it tells us so much about the species behavior. And this is why I'm interested in wildlife tracking. And in this context, marine wildlife tracking in particular. I will present to you Snapper GPS, a system that I co-developed over the past year for general wildlife tracking. And I believe that this technology has particularly great potential for marine wildlife tracking. So I'm here today to ask you for your help so I can build on what has already been developed and make marine wildlife tracking technology available to conservationists across the world. There already are many suppliers of wildlife tracking technology and marine wildlife tracking technology in particular. So why do I feel like there's still something missing? Unfortunately, existing tracking systems often are big and clunky, like this tag on the left. There are general purpose GPS trackers that you can find on Amazon or eBay that are usually advertised for tracking cars or your pets. Unfortunately, those have the issue that they are either very large and heavy because they go on cars, or they have very short battery lives, usually only days, even if they are just on standby and don't even do any GPS. But the biggest problem with wildlife tracking technology is that it usually doesn't even have a listed price. And when it does, a single tag can cost anywhere from several hundred to several thousand US, depending on what features it has. This makes this technology prohibitively expensive for many conservation programs across the world. But wildlife tracking should be a ubiquitous technology that every conservationist should have access to. And this is why I co-developed Snapper GPS. Snapper GPS is a small, low-cost, low-power data logger designed specifically for wildlife tracking. This was co-developed with Jonas Boychert and Professor Alex Rogers as part of my PhD at the University of Oxford. Our current version has a component cost of under £30. You can see the circuit board on the right here next to a coin for a size comparison. It's really small. The latest version can run for up to 10 years with just 2 little watch batteries. So let's talk about the user journey of Snapper GPS so you can understand how it would be used in the field. Don't worry, we will stay on the slide for a while, and it's basically just picture after this, I promise, so please bear with me. So once a user gets the device, they plug it into their laptop with a simple USB cable and use a web application that you can see in the top left to configure it to take location fixes at some desired interval, say once every hour. The device is then attached to the animal of interest, which with whatever method is appropriate for the species in question, and then you just wait for your animal to do its thing. While the animal is moving around, the device regularly collects little snapshots of satellite signals. The famous satellite system used for tracking is GPS, which is the American system. However, Snapper can also work with signals from the European Galileo signal and the Chinese Baidu system. But to save power, the device does absolutely no processing on this raw data. It just saves it. The processing is done later in the cloud. Once your study period is over, you recover the tag, you plug it back into your laptop with your USB cable, and then you use the same web application you used before to configure the device to upload the data to our processing service. And this is where the raw satellite signals are finally actually processed. This requires some external data on the satellite configuration, which NASA very kindly publishes every day. Thank you, NASA. So we use that to locate where the device has been, to calculate where the device has been. Once every snapshot is processed, the web service informs the user that processing is done, and the user simply downloads a CSV or a JSON file with all the locations and their confidences. Then the tag can simply be reconfigured and used for the next deployment. We tried to make it as easy as possible for users to use Snapper, and I think we succeeded. So Snapper has two parts. First, there's the hardware, which consists of our little circuit boards and the antenna. In this image, you can see our hardware in an enclosure that I designed earlier this year specifically to go on sea turtles. The other part of Snapper GPS is the web application and the processing service that is needed to use the hardware. All the configuring, uploading, and downloading is done on a super easy to use website that you can see on the right. So the user does not need to be tech savvy or a programmer to use this device. Now, why do I think that Snapper GPS will be particularly useful for marine wildlife tracking? GNSS signals like GPS do not work underwater, but thankfully many marine species of interest do come up to the surface regularly. These include marine mammals, marine reptiles, marine birds, and many of these often happen to be endangered. So it's really important that we gather more data about them. The cool thing about Snapper GPS is that it uses a snapshot method, hence the name. It only needs 12 milliseconds, yeah, that's milliseconds, to get a location fixed, whereas traditional methods may need many seconds or even minutes to do that. So those traditional methods are more likely to miss those very short surfacing events that you get with, say, a sea turtle. Snapshot receivers already exist, but Snapper is so much cheaper than anything you can find online that it would really change the game if it was really accessible. Instead of just tagging 5 or 10 animals, you could tag dozens without using up all your grant money just on hardware. This means more data points, which means better statistics and more confidence in your study results. And it works. I briefly spoiled earlier that I already designed a sea turtle enclosure for our tags. I just returned from Cape Verde, which is a little island group off the coast of Africa. I worked together with the Mayo Biodiversity Foundation to tag nesting loggerhead sea turtles. And what you can see here is one of the very first sea turtle tracks recorded with a Snapper. Isn't this amazing? I used a watercolor map because this data isn't officially published yet, but you see how much this turtle gets around. It's just 10 days of data. Here's a photo of me helping with the tag attachment. You can also see Alistair Davies here, who you might know from the Aurabada initiative. I have him to thank that I got to do this, so thank you, Alistair Davies. Snapper, as it is now, is ready to go to market as a general wildlife tracking tool once we figure out manufacturing in this chip shortage age that is. So if we've already gotten this far, why am I going through all this trouble to ask you for money? I think there are two crucial pieces of technology that are still needed for Snapper to be really useful for marine applications in particular. First, we need a robust way of detecting that it is above water. This should be quite simple to implement, but our prototype is having some problems, so this will need some more development. The other big thing that's missing right now is a way of finding the animal again. What you really want is some way of having the tag tell you where it is right now, or at least some way of alerting you that the tag is nearby so you can go and recover it. The last thing on the slide isn't a technological challenge, but a business one. How can I make sure that people can still access Snapper GPS and still be able to in 2, 5, 10, or even 20 years? The business role model for Snapper GPS here is AudioMoth. Some of you might have heard of AudioMoth. It's a low-cost acoustic logger for conservation work. I was also co-developed by Professor Alex Rogers, who's my supervisor and has largely been responsible for the hardware side of Snapper. AudioMoth has been really successful in group gets and is now also available on LabMaker. Those are platforms which let people organize bulk orders to get bulk discounts and get around minimum order requirements. This is a really simple way of making Snapper GPS available quickly without having to worry about our own warehouse, supply chain, and shipping. So this is why I'm asking you for your support for Snapper GPS. Even though it's already really great for general wildlife tracking, it still needs some technical improvement before it can become really useful for marine wildlife tracking. The Hack the Planet prize money would let me pay for things like hardware, manufacturing, components, 3D printer, filament and upkeep, or just a new soldering iron. You will also be supporting my fieldwork to test Snapper GPS like I did earlier this year with the Sea Turtle project. Snapper GPS also needs compute, so those AWS credits would come in really handy. Finally, your support would also help me make sure that Snapper GPS is future-proof and won't just become abandoned once I graduate. I therefore want to thank you for listening, and I hope you understand why I'm so excited about Snapper's potential to help with protecting marine wildlife. I have been Amanda Mattis. I'm a PhD student at the University of Oxford, and you can best reach me via email if you have any questions. I noticed that it was a very quick overview, so please do not hesitate to reach out. You can follow the project on Twitter at Snapper GPS. And as I said in the beginning, this was co-developed with Jonas Boychert and Professor Alex Rogers, also at the University of Oxford. As I said at the beginning, this was part of my PhD. So I hope you consider my pitch. I genuinely think that this could have a big impact on marine conservation work. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Amanda. You can now have a breath.
10 minutes is not enough time.
That was an excellent, very passionate presentation. Thank you very much for that. I think it's really interesting. I'd never even considered it. I had a question before I hand over to the other judges. I mean, could you put that on bluefin tuna and pelagic fish, and would it be able to track a bluefin tuna?
If they come to the surface, and you can, and they're, so right now I can actually show it to the camera. This is, again, how big they are, the boards. It's currently in this tag. So I don't know how big a bluefin tuna is, but it would have to be reasonably big at the moment. But, you know, it could get smaller in the future. So yeah, that's kind of the two restraints. Does it come to the surface, and how big and heavy is it?
Okay. And is it capable of withstanding depth pressure? So if you were to put it on a shark or something that went down 500 feet, it's fine.
Yeah, so the enclosure I made for the sea turtles, that one we tested to 100 meters, and it was fine. It probably could do more, but we couldn't test it any further. But yeah, basically the trick is to have an O-ring. If anyone ever needs to make anything waterproof, put an O-ring in it. There's like a little groove here that you can't really see, but yeah, that's the magic sauce.
Okay, excellent. Other judges, do you have any questions?
Yes, just one from me, and thank you very much for the presentation. So, well, two from me. One, how is this put onto the animal? Is it sort of strapped on, or is this do you have to conduct a surgery and insert it into the animal? And two, with regards to competitors, because we've seen, you know, various tracking tools very similar to this. What would you say is the one thing that makes yours stand out?
Yeah, sure. So this is the sea turtle tag that I already showed. It's a bit clunky and big because sea turtles are really, really big. They're huge. So with the sea turtle, you just glue it on the back. But with other species, you would have to do different things. So that would be kind of the biologist that's familiar with attaching, because they usually focus on one species. They know how to attach things to it. So with a seal, what you usually do is you glue it on because they shed their fur. So even if you can't find the animal again, it won't like spend the rest of its life with the tag on it. And then, you know, so we would probably end up providing a general purpose enclosure that's as small as possible. And then people would have to adapt the enclosure for the species in question. But they're used to that because they had to do that for other stuff too. Yeah, so birds usually have a little backpack that they glue on, and different species have kind of different methods of doing it. Yeah. And then the other thing was what makes us competitive. It's just so much cheaper. That's the big thing. And it's so much easier to find and use. Everything's going to be open source. And yeah, but the big thing is the price.
Who do you see as your key buyers?
I'm sorry?
Who do you see as your key buyers?
Oh, buyers. Yeah, conservation programs. So, or individual researchers. So groups in pretty much every biology department, they are constantly buying GPS loggers, and unfortunately, you always lose some because that's the nature of field work. So if they're cheaper, that's great, because you can use your grant money for other things.
And it would work. Sorry, back to the bluefin tuna analogy, but I'm obsessed with migrating salmon. And you put it, could you get it on a salmon that may or may not leap a couple of times in the ocean and up to the mouth of to the source of a river? I mean, if you could get it on a big salmon.
I reckon so.
Yeah.
I don't know how to attach something to a fish, but I have seen tags on fish, so it's possible. Yeah. So once the hardware is there, people can figure out how to attach it, and then I don't see the problem because that'd be, yeah.
Hey, Amanda, if I may, when you showed the sea turtle route collection,
yes,
have you done field-based recovery? You mentioned that
yes,
tag recovery is an issue.
Yes.
Do these devices broadcast their GPS location, or do you have to collect them in order to collect the history of GPS pings?
Yeah, right now it's a pure data logger, so you need to recover it. But that's why I put on like technological challenge as a way to kind of find them again. So the thing with loggerhead sea turtles in general is what they do is they don't lay all their eggs for the year in one in one go. What they do is every few years when they have a nesting season, they lay a nest and then they go, and after 2 weeks they come back to the same beach or one nearby and lay another nest. So what you end up doing is you have beach patrols to find the turtles. And the useful thing about this deployment was they already had people on the beaches because they have trouble with poaching, so they have beach patrols there anyway. And it's true about many species that you can just, you know that they'll be at some water source or some nesting site at some point of the year or day or week, and you can just go and wait for them. But it does make it, that's why it's restricted, right? That's why I'm asking for your help, is because the retrieval help is going to make it a lot more convenient.
Right. Thank you.
If I can, I love this project. I would buy it. I type turtles, and
oh, you do. That's great.
I guess, kind of alluding to one of the other questions. I mean, tags are expensive.
Yes.
How is it that you can sell this for £30? That is my question.
Yeah, it's basically because there's no processing being done on it. And I think there's tags out there that do very similar things that cost an order of magnitude or two more. And I think it's just that no one ever lowered the price because you can get away with it. Because, research money does, if you ask for it, people are going to find it and people are going to buy it, I guess. But yeah, it's basically just a little radio with an antenna and the storage that collects the radio data. There's really not that much more to it. The kind of intelligent thing is all the processing that's done afterwards. But you can do that on your own laptop if you wanted to. Like, it's going to be open source, so you don't even need to use our web processing service. You could do it yourself. So yeah, that's okay. How it's so cheap. It's actually not that complicated.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Has anybody got any last questions?
Just want to say we loved it, Amanda. I thought it was a very, very good presentation. I love the concept of scaling. When we took at AWS, talk about thinking big. I could see how you could scale with this. But yeah, just a quick comment. It was really, really good, well presented. And there's a lot of people at AWS who want to ask you about all sorts of other things to do with the technology. But obviously, we want to focus on this particular project right now.
Yeah, get in touch. Thank you so much for your time and your questions.
Yeah, congratulations. Well done. Back to you, Tim.
Thanks, Chris. Great. So we are four pitches down. There are two remaining. So next up we have Loop Recyclers Tech from Nigeria and Dr. Colin Zuckermago. We're delighted to have you with us today. And this concept uses the power of geospatial data and the Internet of Things to look at to monitor and improve recycling rates for plastics, and to prevent plastics reaching rivers and the ocean. And the solution is looking to reduce pollution levels, prevent illegal waste disposal, and to address public health issues associated with all those things as well. So over to you, Colin. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Colin Zuckermago. I'm the founder and CEO of Loop Recyclers Tech Limited. We're a startup waste management and recycling company based in Lagos, Nigeria. We seek to provide geospatial data on the environment as a service to governments and other stakeholders. We also plan to encourage clean loop recycling using biometric smart bins for clean collection of packaging materials. We identified that there's a low level of environmental hygiene and absence of smart tools for collection of packaging material. There's also poor visibility on pollution sites, leading to increased pollution and climate change. There's also a low level of PET bottle collection, about 5% in Lagos. And this also contributes to increased contamination of collected plastics. There's also inadequate geospatial data, and we'll be providing this intervention through our dashboards to the respective government and agencies that would be able to utilize this service. We've also identified that there's community-acquired illnesses associated with malaria, with pollution, including malaria and diarrheal diseases. So one of our solutions is the Smart Bin, which utilizes a biometric fingerprint access for collection of packaging materials in a clean loop recycling. And we are also going to be providing this geospatial data as a service with machine learning algorithms for monitoring the pollution level versus recycling rates in the community. We would also be providing continuous community education on environmental hygiene and recycling, as well as healthcare incentives for recyclers. At the moment, we've got a few companies in Nigeria that are recycling. We've got WeCyclers, Recycle Points, Chanja Dati, Pakam. We've also got individuals that go about just picking up plastics and other packaging material on the way. And their models rely on manual collection. So there's always a lot of contamination of the packaging material with other waste and inorganic contaminants. And then their model of business is linear compared to what we are offering, which is a circular business model. Also, the incentives that they are offering are limited to cash, and maybe some other products that also lead to more pollution. They do not utilize as much data as they should, and most of them don't have mobile applications. So we are offering IoT-based technology that will enable us to have better visibility and to be more proactive to react to the fullness, or rather the bin full. When our bins are almost full, our drivers will be able to reach out to the bins and evacuate the contents in record time. We'll also be providing dashboards to different organizations, to Ministry of Environment, and this would give them a better visualization and analysis of the state of the environment. We'll be providing clean tech recycling at a more cost-efficient price, and we would also be reducing the climate impact because our methods utilize technology, and this reduces the carbon footprint overall. We'll be also providing a bottle-to-bottle 100% recycling, and which is also part of the drive towards a circular economy, reducing waste and closing the loop. We'll be providing healthcare incentives for our recyclers through an aggregated value system that we'll create. We'll also be providing more of community education, because we've identified that when people are better educated, they'll be able to recycle and get better outcomes for all. Our business models include business to government, business to business, as well as business to customer. At the moment, the focus seems to be on the B2B and the B2C models that deal with collection of plastics and recycling, because we've seen that there's more value in tackling the plastic pollution at the cause, at the source, which is poor collection, poor sorting, and low recycling. But at the same time, we would also be open to explore the B2G model, which would provide geospatial data as a service to governments and other environmental stakeholders. And our team consists of 6 multidisciplinary individuals. We've got our operations manager, Joy. She's got 7 years experience, and she's the clinical lead at the company where she's a partner. We've also got Gift, who is our marketing manager. So she's got 4 years experience. She's got a BA in English. She's skilled in digital marketing, search engine optimization, social media, as well as content creation. She's also bilingual. She speaks English and French, so that opens up the market to Francophone countries when we're ready to expand. Our legal and advisory services, we've got Joseph Onya. He's got 17 years experience, and he's very well versed in corporate and finance law. Our chief design officer, William, he's a mechanical engineer. He's skilled in fabrication. He's also skilled in sketching and project design, as well as teaching, as well as some other software skills. Our chief technical officer, Roland, he's got 15 years experience. He's a software engineer. He's skilled in cryptography, and he's also co-founder of Ket Zero Limited. And I'm the CEO. I've got about 16 years experience as a medical doctor. I'm also an advocate for digital transformation and the environment, as well as the shift to the circular economy. Our advisors, we're very grateful to Catapult for the advice and the support they've given us, as well as the Commonwealth. We we seek to achieve reduction in plastic pollution by 2050. We also want to reclaim value from waste through clean road recycling, as well as creating jobs for unemployed youths. We want to transform Lagos to a digital and smart city as a model for Nigeria and Africa. We'd also want to build capacity for smart sensor and space technology through a STEM lab, which will be modeled on the Arduino Science Kit and Arduino Science Journal. We want to reduce the incidence of malaria in Nigeria, especially in urban areas, and we would also be increasing education and awareness on environmental hygiene, as well as rates of recycling. At the moment, we are fundraising for pilots to build a smart bin and a mobile application. We have a non-disclosure agreement signed with a third-party supplier of a smart sensor, though we're also planning to produce our own sensors when we set up the STEM lab. And we're registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission of Nigeria, and we have our patent pending. And there's a high school that has indicated interest that they would like us to come and mentor their students on 21st century digital skills and the possibility of setting up a STEM lab. We are affiliated with the Recyclers Association of Nigeria, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation community, the Nigerian Plastic Action Partnership, as well as the Things community. Sorry, could you change the slide, please? So this is just a snapshot of our budget. We are trying to get raise about £354,000 to be able to go to market. Though what we require to build the bins and the mobile application is somewhere around £15,000. Next slide. So our market size is, we have a projected market size of about 2.04 million tons of recyclable plastics in Nigeria, and it's projected to increase to about 3.47 million tons by 2030. And the value of recycled PET plastic is about £180 per ton. Our beachhead market is Lagos, which has a population of 25 million people, and we seek to reach about 200,000 new recyclers each month. So if we're able to generate a minimum of 240 tons per month, and we hope to increase that every month, at least 240 tons per month, and sell that at 180 pounds per ton. We're looking to raise 355,000 pounds so that we can reach 200,000 recyclers per month. And the funding would provide the necessary hardware, the technology, as well as the R&D units that we'll set up in the school. And we target that with this revenue, we'll be able to generate a minimum of £3.6 million per annum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple of questions, and then I'll pass it on to the rest of the team. How much does one bin cost to make?
It's somewhere between 12 to 15,000 pounds.
And what is the capacity of one bin?
It can take about 850 bottles.
850 bottles. Okay. And you're expecting the recycler to be a Lagos citizen, yeah?
Well, Lagos is our beachhead market, and I'd like to clarify that the 15,000 pounds actually is the budget for making 4 bins, not 1.
Okay. And okay, I definitely think there's an opportunity. I love the idea of, I agree with you wholeheartedly in terms of trying to stop it at source, and trying to put a value on the plastic is the only way to get recycling. I think within the bins, there's an opportunity to look at, and we had a very successful initiative in the Mediterranean where when you put your plastic bottle in one of the bins, you've got a coupon from the bin, and then you could use that coupon in the local stores. And that's either something that you could get a big FMCG like Unilever or Reckitt to sponsor, and then there's a revenue model for you for giving them the data of the recycler, but then also you've got the circular economy of them going back to the local community. But yeah, it's a great presentation, super important. I've got some questions about how you scale it, because it's only going to work if you can really scale it, right? But I'll just hand over to the rest of the team if they've got any questions. Otherwise, I'll ask some more. Anyone?
quick one from me. Thanks, Collins. I wonder if you've thought about any other plastics other than PET. Like, we all know that PET holds the most value, right? It's easy to valorize and it's usually the most easy to recycle. But usually because of that, it's already the most collected material in the community, right? And the informal waste pickers, the informal waste collectors do a very, very good job in a lot of places, a lot of countries, a lot of different regional areas, that they're able to collect and get that material back into the circular economy quite easily. So the question is, have you thought about doing this for any other types of materials, possibly more hard to recycle, the things that the informal waste collectors aren't already managing?
Yes, we've thought about that. We've also identified that there's a major gap with regards education. So we want to focus on educating the people first of all, and we believe that as we increase education, and once we have our bins set up in strategic places, people will be able to put the other materials, because we hope to be able to design a bin that can take all materials, regardless of what they're made of.
Where would sorting then be done?
The sorting would be done because the bin is going to be equipped with an infrared spectroscope. So that would do a kind of auto sort within the bin. So to sort the materials to different compartments within the bin that will be designated for different materials.
Okay.
In that similar vein to Chris, what about contamination? So cleaning, if you're relying on individuals, the recyclers, to put in the materials, what about if they're already contaminated? I know that's a huge problem.
So we are going to be doing a lot of education, and part of that, the education would include instructional videos, and the terms and condition of using the bin is that any material that comes in needs to be clean. Would specifically target, we're going to really target school age individuals, because these are people who are most likely to become early adopters and will follow on through, as well as the millennials, people who are already using technology. They'll be able to understand the need to keep the material clean and not mixed up with other food waste.
So you could base the bins in all the schools?
Yeah, we're targeting schools, shopping malls, cinemas, places where people congregate, large markets. So before we locate the bins in these places, we'll go out on our awareness campaign.
You're relying on the goodwill of people.
Yeah.
So if they don't clean it and it goes into your bin, what happens?
Well, we're going to be operating a reward system. So because we're using the infrared spectroscope to sort the bin, to sort the material, by the time it gets back to the factory, and everyone who uses the bin has to log in with their biometric, so we'll know who put what.
You know who put the dirty. Okay.
Exactly. So so you can't cheat the system. You can't beat the system. So there will be reward for those who comply, and then those who don't comply.
What's the reward?
We'll probably give out some wellness incentives. There'll be some wellness incentives, maybe a basket of fruits, something to keep people motivated to keep using the.
How about airtime?
Sorry?
How about airtime credits? Yeah, I have
airtime data. Those are all part of it. Airtime, internet data.
Collins, I have three quick questions for you in a row. One is, have you built one of these bins already? Second is, do you understand the maintenance and upkeep costs of the bins beyond their initial capital expenditure required to build one? And have you modeled the payback rate? Because there's it will take a while on a per bin basis to earn back the invested cost of the bin and the maintenance itself. So have you modeled those costs, and how long does it take to get to break even on a bin?
So we've actually, we're in the process of building the bin. We've designed the prototype, and regarding the costs and the return on investment, we look at it that if we're able to get maximum utilization of the bins on a daily basis, we should be able to recover the initial investment within 6 months.
Even at $850 850 bottles per week, per day, per what's your expected fill rate for the bins?
So we're targeting 200,000 new recyclers every month. So our projection is that we should be increasing every month. And we're going to locate the bins in densely populated places where people already generate a lot of plastic. And with our continuous education, with our school program, with our social media, we project that we should have, we'll probably be visiting the bins more than 2 times a day at the rate that we are projecting, because definitely 850 a day would not cut it.
Yeah, thank you.
What is the current situation for somebody who wants to recycle their plastics in Lagos at the moment?
There's a Food and Beverage Recycling Alliance, and they've been able to put together strategic points for people to drop off their plastics. And then some of our competitors, which we also hope will be collaborators, they also have some recycling programs ongoing where people are able to bring their plastics, or in some cases they go around in their little tricycles and from house to house to pick up plastics from people. So.
Okay. And is there a current sort of B2B marketplace in the region for selling once the plastic has then been recycled?
Yes, there is. We're members of the Recyclers Association of Nigeria. So from time to time, they're on our group platform, we see people advertising, people are requesting. So the market is actually very viable.
Yeah, okay. Excellent. Thank you very much. Another very important initiative, and what a stellar team. Got some real brains there on your team. Thank you very much for excellent presentation and a wonderful initiative. Back to you, Tim.
Thank you, Chris. That's great. Really exciting project. Thanks, Collins. And now we're on to our final pitch. So for our final pitch, we have Miguel Garcia from Trinidad and Tobago with a pitch called Project 30, which is looking to streamline the selection and evaluation process for marine protected areas using high resolution satellite imagery, which will be analysed via machine learning. So ultimately, the team's looking for their tool to be used by governments, NGOs, and conservation professionals to manage and designate NPAs. So thank you very much. Well, over to you.
Good day, everyone. My name is Miguel Garcia, and I'll be presenting on behalf of Project 30. I'll be talking about our project idea, ideal MPA mapping using remote sensing and machine learning. So our project is based around marine protected areas. So these are areas that are manage human activity. So the problem is that they require data, stakeholder buy-in, and resources to get managed effectively. And many developing countries lack these resources. And the lack of data is one of the largest hurdles preventing the creation of cheap to manage and extremely effective MPAs. So our solution, what we want to do is target the challenge of data availability. We want to provide users with base satellite derived data to begin evaluating current marine protected areas and then selecting potential marine protected areas for that. So just a quick introduction to the team. We're all graduate students from the University of Trinidad and Tobago, going from the master's, MPhil, and PhD level. So we'll start with some general research interests. Myself, I'm focused on riverine plume mapping, and I work for a sea turtle conservation company. Jean-Luc is a fisheries research scientist. Chevelle works on coral reef carbonate budgets, and Elijah works on researching plankton species distribution. So now going into the core aspects of our project, the technology, we're using 3 main aspects: satellite imagery, machine learning, and cloud computing. So how are we going to do this? So our idea is to, starting with the satellites, we've identified 3 satellites to start with: Landsat 8, Sentinel-2, and the Planet Doves. And what we plan to do is process these images to derive things like chlorophyll, coral health, coral present, sargassum, influx, seagrass health, plastics. We're going to use all these different derived products from these satellites in tandem with available data and ground truthing data to create a robust spatial and temporal database of the area. So that's phase one, data collection. Phase two is the actual processing, which will be done using the database we created, user input. So the marine managers are going to do their community consultations, working with their governments and figuring out what types of MPs they want. And from their input, they're going to figure out what an ideal MPA looks like for them. And then we'll incorporate valuation algorithms such as Maxam to figure out, okay, this is your best place to put an MPA in. And we expect outputs from this would be ideal MPA areas. We'll be able to identify temporal issues within your MPA if you might have seasonal sargassum trends or seasonal bleachings. We'll be able to see emergent trends. So you might start seeing an influx of sediment plumes or chlorophyll plumes that we could identify, and then you could know that that's a priority area you want to target when, well, fixing your MP, while creating your MP. So looking at some of the general differences between products, generally, when you have MPA making software, they require a lot of user input. They expect marine managers to operate the software and have the data necessary to create a well thought out MP. But there are limits of resources, the actual finding a competent manager to use the software, and then there's also the issue of data availability. The less data you have, the less comprehensive these softwares will be in the long term. Our idea is to bypass that somewhat by providing data for the clients as well. So using the satellite data and us working as managers and utilizing the valuation software, we're going to be the ones providing data. And while we still use the input of on-site fisheries managers and the current data that's available, we'll need a lot less of it to create an effective MP. That's the idea behind it. So looking at who do we service? So the service is to the ocean. 70% of the ocean is, of the Earth is ocean, and the blue economy is estimated to be worth 3 trillion. We agreed as a global community to try to cover at least 30% of the Earth with marine protected areas by 2030, hence the name Project 30. As of now, around 7.8% is covered by MPAs. And when you actually start looking at the country breakdowns, you'll see that the issue isn't with developed nations. Many nations like the US have 26% of their marine space covered in MPAs. The UK has, well, varying amounts, but generally you look at around 36%, which is above the targeted goal. So the issue is really developing nations lacking the coverage, lacking data to create effective MPAs that can be a service. So a lot of our design when creating this product was user-centered design. What we did was talk to a bunch of experts, local marine managers, persons working at NGOs, persons working for the government on what issues they see and how we could remedy that. And what we end up seeing is that the same issues crop up. A lack of data, there's a lack of new technology integration, a lack of resources, and the one issue we can't really solve is the stakeholder buy-in. So from these issues, we identify what our main services should be. So the MPA consultancy service, where we're actively creating MPAs and saying, this is where you should look to develop a new MPA. An MPA valuation service, where we're saying that we would look at, let's say, how your MPA operates over a year based on the availability of satellite data and whatever other data you have. And then we'll tell you, okay, this is what you did well. This is what you need to work on. If you have influxes of sargassum, if you have an issue with turbid waters, what issues you have, what are the current issues you're facing, and we may not say exactly mitigation methods, but we could tell you what you need to focus on. You have an issue of plastic, you have an issue of sargassum, you have an issue of eutrophication. You now know it, now you can go and target it. And the advantage of using satellites is you have that large-scale view of whatever your study area is. It's a much larger coverage. And then we also identify other value-added products that add value to the company, like processing small maps based on information we already gathered that might be useful to fishermen or might be useful to other NGO managers. And then we identified that one of the things that we're not initially providing is a continuous monitoring system. That requires different technology, but it's something that everyone has identified the need for. So we have set that for a 4-year project goal. So after operating successfully, we want to develop a continuous monitoring systems for MPA. So looking at our core aspects to our revenue stream, we believe that besides the direct services we are going to offer, we also want sustainability through collaboration. So having experts, external expertise, having equipment and labor provided from institutional partners like universities or government agencies, where we're offering them access to our data, our information for whatever purposes they have. And in return, they're helping us out with providing equipment, with labor. We're already talking with organizations like the University of Trinidad and Tobago because we have a lot of connections there. And then also other governmental organizations like the Institute of Marine Affairs, where they would have access to other equipment that the university mightn't have, or other contacts that they mightn't have. And then the third part is that we realize that a lot of our potential clients mightn't have the startup capital to run an MPA project. So what we want to do is work with products to figure out the best pricing, to see the areas we need to focus with, and then to figure out how we could help them get that startup capital. Okay. So now looking at the different routes to market, our marketing aspect, we want to build large networks of collaborators as opposed to just a client business relationship. We want to say that we're working with you and we want to keep working with you. And since we're working directly with potential clients, we're not going to go out on any major marketing campaigns or anything like that. We're directly talking to the people we want to work with, at least in the beginning. And then we're also successfully showcasing different projects to show that this is something that works. This is something you'd want to do in the future. And now looking at a little initial project timeline, this is including a pilot project, provided we win the competition. So the idea is that the first step we're doing, and we're currently doing this, is building a network of collaborators, finding our institutional relationships. The next thing is actually developing the program for Project 30. I've already been doing a lot of specific work on deriving different satellite algorithms, finding out chlorophyll turbidity. So now it's getting that on a much larger scale with a lot more variables. The next thing we want to achieve is a pilot project that we want to run in Grenada because they want MPAs and they lack the expertise and the data to actively create these MPAs. So we identified that area to start a pilot project. And lastly, showcasing the successful projects, whether it's through webinars or research articles, journal articles that we'd be writing. The idea is to show that this is something that works, this is something we can replicate and keep doing successfully. So if I'm doing a quick summary of everything I said today, is that we want to create and evaluate MPAs. We use satellite data and any available local data sets we can. Our primary clients are developing nations that essentially lack the data to create MPAs themselves. And we're not going to be reinventing the wheel. We're building on all the hard work done before us, and we're just continuing this trend of developing an MPA. Yep, and this is our presentation from Project 30. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mikhail. Obviously, I think everybody on this call knows the importance of marine protected areas. Do you know about what Mission Blue have done, in their hope spots?
I've read a little bit about it, but not too much.
I think it's worth having a look at that in terms of how they're looking at MPAs and identifying them on species and sort of scientific data. So, you know, in your vision, once you've identified the MPAs, will you be then looking to help to enforce them and to help ensure that they stay as MPAs?
Well, that's one of the biggest issues, paper parks. So part of the idea behind this project is, while we're not going to be sticking around, we're equipping managers with all the tools necessary so that even if they might lack competent enforcement, where they mightn't have the funding or the budget to constantly go out there to monitor, if they utilize our evaluation service, then they would have data on what issues they need to target, at least from the, well, satellite perspective. So it's not to say we're out there doing the enforcing for them, we're just providing them with the tools to figure out at least what they could tackle on their own side.
Okay. And will you be collaborating with local fishermen in terms of understanding the fish stocks in particular areas and breeding grounds and migrations, etc., that maybe you can't get from satellites?
So one of the biggest parts of the project that we can't just identify from space, the local biological data, one of our goals is that, at least in the ground truthing stage, when we're ensuring all the algorithms would properly and derive the proper quantities, our part is to do field ground surveys and figuring out fish stock, fishing density, and not only that, also speaking with all the different stakeholders within the community, understanding from their perspective what's going on, asking them about their knowledge within the area and figuring out what exactly they want to happen and what can happen. Because without that proper stakeholder buy-in, no MPA will, no matter how good your data behind it is.
Correct. Team, any other questions? Angie?
Which one? Sorry, I'll go if you don't mind. I work with marine protected areas, and we work a lot with paper parts. I like the direction your head is going in. I love that direction. I especially like the idea of exchanging data for equipment, which is one of the, I think that is absolutely fantastic. I just wanted to caution you about using the satellites for health. So for example, coral reefs, we can't yet determine coral health using satellites. Not even the Allen Coral Atlas can do that, There's already a lot of very, existing data that can actually be plugged into it. So I think the idea is not so much that there's a lack of data, but finding that data and then putting it and using it, responsibly. So really, I just wanted to say that I like the idea. I like the direction your head is going in. I think you need to give a bit more thought as to what is already existing and how that is working and how you can really build on that to improve what is already there. But really nice presentation, and thanks for that.
Yep, thanks a lot.
I'll build on that, and I think using it to help certainly the local fishermen. We've had success in managed marine protected areas but local fishing being enabled. So how do you work with the fishermen that they can increase their catch by actually creating the marine protected area, stopping the illegal industrial fishing, but actually enabling local small scale fishermen to work with you within the marine protected area and actually end up getting a higher value for their fish because of the increase in stocks. But yeah, I echo Angie, very important. Has anybody else got any other questions on
just one from me? Thank you very much for the presentation, and just well, two questions. Understanding how your tool could be used for marine spatial planning, which I think is essentially what Angie and Chris has been talking about, how this tool can also be part of stakeholder consultations and making decisions about MPAs, or is it intended, can it be used for that, or is it intended to provide baselines and to say, this is where the biodiverse areas are, with you and teams going out on the field, or can it be used for a larger marine planning process? And then my second question And I echo what Angie said with regards to, looking at what is out there. But my second question is with relation to how does your idea fit with existing historical satellite data that has already been captured? Because whilst I really like the idea of having a monitoring program, which is really important, especially for countries that have already established MPAs, having these monitoring programs there, but is there a way for us to also understand what came before, so that we can better appreciate the change or the changes?
Okay, so I'll start with the first question, more or less asking what we're targeting with the data. So for larger marine spatial planning plans, yes, that the data can be used for that. And I think more or less what our data could be used for is really up to whoever's engaging us. So if it's a government that's strictly interested in creating a robust marine spatial plan where they're looking at, they just want to see a bunch of abiotic factors, they could use our project or program for that. If it's on a much smaller scale, let's say I work with a turtle NGO, if they just want to identify, not even to make a marine protected area, they know that, okay, within this area, there are turtles, what's going on with it within this area? How can we further manage this area? They could also use our program where they mightn't be creating an MPA, but they would find useful information in knowing, okay, there's sargassum coming in March to April. There's sediment plume coming in. While it's flooding, there's effluents aggregating in this area. This is a problem, we need to address it. So it's really up to whoever our clients are. And the second question, can you repeat it again? I just lost my train of thought.
No, that's okay. This was with regards to historical satellite data. Is that something that will be plugged into this idea?
Yeah, so this is actually one of the main parts of the idea that kind of helps differentiate from other things. Because of the large catchment of historical data, we're planning to say that we're not building an MPA based on how the factors look today, yesterday, or tomorrow, tomorrow. We're building it on a year, 2 years, 3 years prior. And that's where the machine learning comes in. We're aggregating all of that data together and then saying, okay, from this data set of 3 years, we're seeing this trend that this is an area that has ideal chlorophyll levels, that has ideal coral levels, that has ideal seagrass, that doesn't have too much sargassum coming in, that doesn't have an issue with flooding or flood plumes. We're using this aggregated historical set of data to accurately say, this is where you might want to plan your MPA, or if you already have an MPA set up, this is where an issue might arise based on the trends we've collected over these years.
Thank you.
Great. Anybody else got any questions? No? Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for that. Hugely important initiative, and well done. Thanks so much.
Thanks
Tim?
a lot.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And what a really wonderful and inspiring set of presentations. And I think really a wonderful testament to the commitment and dedication of the teams that are participating and to the challenges that we set at the beginning of Hack the Planet. So I just wanted to say at this point on a kind of a personal note, it's been a really great pleasure to work with the teams all the way through the competition. I read more than 80 entries at the beginning of the competition, and I've really enjoyed meeting many of the participants during the competition, and it's been a great pleasure to watch the ideas and the concepts put together, how they've progressed over the last few months, and just the quality of the final entries we received. So just really well done to everyone, and to everyone else who's not here today but has participated in the competition. It's been really remarkable. The judges are now going to retire to a small dark room to deliberate on who are the winners of the competition for this year. And I think it's going to be a very, very difficult discussion, a challenging decision for them to make. But as they disappear off to make that decision, we are very lucky to be joined today by Dr Asha de Vos, who is going to deliver our competition keynote for us. Dr Asha de Vos is an international award-winning Sri Lankan marine biologist, ocean educator and pioneer of blue whale research within the Northern Indian Ocean, with degrees from the University of St Andrews, Oxford and Western Australia, and is now the founder and executive director of the Sri Lankan non-profit organisation Ocean Swell, which is Sri Lanka's first marine conservation research and education organisation, home to the well-known Sri Lankan Blue Whale Project, which is the first long-term study of blue whales in the region. Asha, it's a real pleasure to have you with us today to deliver the keynote. Thank you so much for being here. And the floor is yours, and hopefully while you are speaking, the judges will be making a decision. So over to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here today. It's a real honor, actually. To be fair, I'd rather be physically present with all of you, but in the absence of that option, it's great to be here virtually and to share this evening with all of you. Well, it's evening here, so I'm going to go with that. But I'm particularly, I mean, I understand that some of you are going to be sitting in the audience and wondering, do I have to sit and listen to someone talk? I just want to know the results. Like, how is this going to enhance my life? I'm so nervous right now. So I really appreciate the gift of your time. And I will hope that at the end of this hour, some of the things I will be able to tell you, some of the things I share, some parts of my journey will help you as you progress in this amazing trajectory that you're on right now. This trajectory to try to change the world, right? And I'm going to try to make it as interesting as possible, so wish me luck. But you'll notice that I've got a slightly strange title, and that's partly because when I was asked to do this talk and I was told this is called Hack the Planet competition, I thought about it for a little bit. And I know that the word hack is because it's a hackathon. But I also thought about the fact that, are we really hacking the planet? Or are we hacking into human potential to save the planet? And that's truly what I think this competition is about, right? It's hacking into the superpowers that all of you possess. The superpowers of innovation, curiosity, a desire to change the world, all of those are superpowers that I think everybody has, but not everyone taps into. And the fact that you are tapping into that, the fact that you want something more for, you have a greater mission is really something very special. And I applaud you for that. And so regardless of what happens today, I want you to know that whoever, I hope this story will show you that really these are moments in time, but the journey is much longer. I'm going to take you back to my childhood where it all began. So I'm going to tell you a bit about my story, and I'm going to weave in some of the lessons I've learned in hindsight that in some ways I wish people had put to me, structured and put to me when I was going through my journey. So that's me, in case you're wondering. I'm the one with the pigtails with my brother. And I was about 6 years old when I first sort of started dreaming of this idea of becoming an adventurous scientist, right? I come from a family where no wasn't really a word that was used much in this. I mean, of course we were disciplined, but in other ways. So we had scorpions in our bedroom, we had fireflies, we had caterpillars, we had an amazing childhood, and that allowed us to really grow into who we are today. But the point being that I used to look at these magazines, right, National Geographic, and I'd look at the people who are adventurers and scientists, and I'd say, I want to go where no one else will ever go and see what no one else will ever see, regardless of the fact that nobody on those pages really looked like me, right? So if you go back in time and you look at National Geographic, really there wasn't a lot of diversity. But the key thing is that I had self-belief, right? And every child has this wacky amount of self-belief in them. And if you think about it, I mean, we had a bunk bed at home, and we would climb to the top bunk and launch ourselves off because we believed we could fly, right? Unfortunately, as we grow up, what happens is our vocabulary expands and people introduce the word limiting to us. And instead of self-belief, we start thinking about self-limiting beliefs. And that's kind of where things start to go wrong, right? So what I want you to do on this journey as you go along, and not today, not tomorrow, maybe in, a year, 5 years, always remind yourself, right, of that child. Think about one time when you were a kid doing something that felt reckless, but you knew you could do it, right? You knew you were going to jump off the top of your bunk bed. You should stand up and you could dust your knees off and you would make it, right? You could fly. And if you can go back to those moments and just remind yourself, right, about self-belief, I want you to tap into that through this journey because it will help you in the long term, I guarantee. So relevant to this conversation, particularly because we're talking about satellites and stuff, I sort of fell in love with water and I started to think about what the opportunities were for an adventurous scientist sort of career in the ocean, right? And one of the people who sort of influenced me and piqued my curiosity was this gentleman over here. Sir Arthur C. Clarke. If you don't know who he is, you should definitely look him up. He's a science fiction writer, futurist, inventor, undersea explorer, moved from the UK to Sri Lanka to dive the shipwrecks that litter our coastline, probably also to escape the bad weather. But what he told us was that he was coming to dive, right? And so I would go for swims at my local swimming club and I would go sit with him afterwards and he would tell me all these stories, right? And each story piqued my curiosity and left me sort of hanging, right? I mean, this one time he told me about this big brown skin that kept swimming past him and it kept going and going and going. And when I asked him what it was, he simply said, I don't know, I had to end my dive, right? So I will be honest, I don't know if it's a true story, if he made it up, if he was trying to just entice a child who was obviously goggle-eyed and wanting to know more. But one thing was that curiosity in me, right, has been such a key ingredient because I was like, I want to know what that brown skin is. I'm going to find out, right? I haven't found out yet, which is great because that means my journey just keeps going, right? Like I don't have to end here. But the point is, we need to remember that curiosity is possibly one of the key ingredients to wanting to drive change. Because if you know, if you can ask the questions and find out what we know, but then what we don't know, that's where you find the gaps, right? That's where you find the gaps and you think, here's something we don't know, and here are my skills. And if I can put those together, mesh those together, then perhaps I can make a change, right? And so dig deep into your curiosity all the time and ask all the questions. And if you're a podcast listener, there's a great podcast called Ologies. I'm not paid to say this, please note. But in that, her tagline is ask smart people dumb questions. I don't believe there are any dumb questions. Just ask people questions, right? Be curious. So by the time I was 17 and I was we're making big life decisions at 17, right? I can't believe the world trusts 17-year-olds to make life decisions the way we have to. But anyway, here I am making a life decision about what I'm going to do, right? And I'm now resolute that I want to be a marine biologist because it has the three key ingredients: adventure, science, and salt water, right? And so I'm super excited, pretty much yelling off the rooftops, telling all my neighbors and family friends, I'm Sri Lankan, right? So when I tell them, I'm met with skepticism and they're all looking at me and they're like, that's great, so what are you going to do with that degree? And I was really confused, right? And they're like, oh, so you have to go abroad to study it, so that means you won't be coming home again, right? See, what you have to understand is in Sri Lanka, marine biology was unheard of when I was starting, right? And this is not in prehistoric times, please note, this is just a few decades ago, right? So we're a beautiful island with 8 times more ocean area than land area, but yet we didn't have a culture of exploration and conservation and recreation around the ocean because traditionally our culture was very much about the extraction, right? The economy. Fishermen went to fish and they came back and that was important, and it still is a big part of our economy. So I realize now that people were simply their skepticism came partly from a place where they could only advise me based on what they knew, right? And they didn't know what marine biology was. They didn't know what a marine biologist did. It seemed so scary for them because they were not willing to step outside the box. Whereas I just wanted to be outside the box. So be proud if you're living outside the box because that's where all the fun happens. Not inside the box, but outside the box, right? And so I was pretty resolute. I turned to them and I said, I'll carve my own niche. Had no idea how I was going to do it. Trust me, I remember saying it. I remember those words. I can still feel that anxiety as I said it out loud and thinking to myself, my goodness, I have to make this work, right? And then I did have to go away, but I told everybody that I was going to come back and serve my country, serve Sri Lanka. That was just everything that mattered to me, was about coming back to serve my nation, right? And I was lucky. I will say I was lucky because my parents, I come from South Asian culture where you're a doctor, lawyer, engineer, a business person if you go to university, right? What else would you do? And why would you waste time doing anything else? But I told my parents I want to be a marine biologist. They said, do what you love and you'll do it well. I was really lucky because they obviously trusted that I knew what I needed for my own life. And that meant I felt that I had the confidence to believe that it was possible for my own life. My culture, most people don't swim, and you can see as in this photograph, right? It's a beautiful beach, it's beautiful sunset, but life ended at the shoreline. Life ends very much at the shoreline. And I identify strongly with being a Sri Lankan, and that's my culture. But I also believe that we're part of the evolution of our culture. So the more I can do and take people out into the ocean, the more we'll change, more people will appreciate, and more people will fall in love with this incredible space that is filled with magical kingdoms. And then that's when we will start to make a change for our oceans. So this is me at 18. I'm fresh-faced and off to university. I went to the University of St. Andrews. I will say a big shock, right? First time I'm living away from home, but I'm also going from beautiful tropical weather to not so beautiful, not beautiful weather, absolutely stunning place. I absolutely loved my time in St. Andrews. And I will say it was such a big part, it's a big part of who I am, but yeah, the weather could have done a bit better, I think. But so for me at this point, so I do my degree and I'm like, yeah, great, this is awesome. But like, how can I be a marine biologist if I haven't, done marine biology, right? Like if I've only done, like, I know the theory and I understand what the book says and the textbook says, but what about everything else, right? And so I took a leap of faith and I decided I was going to go and go somewhere where I could get experience. This is me in my tent in New Zealand, right? Now, you might be wondering what this has to do with marine biology, but here you go, right? I didn't have enough money to get to New Zealand, so I was a tatty roger, and for any Scots out there, you might know that that means a person who digs rotting potatoes out of potato fields, and I saved money. And then I get to New Zealand, and I realized I don't have money to actually live in a building which had like walls. So here I was living in a tent. But the point was, I wasn't going to let anything stop me, right? Like I really was determined to get this experience, get out there, find out what it was like to be a marine biologist, really, and like really get my hands dirty. So while I was living in this tent, this was, back in the day before phones had Wi-Fi, shock, horror, but, we did live in a time when there was no internet in your pocket. And I would go to the internet cafes and to send messages emails to my parents because, here I was with a backpack living across the world on my own. And one day I was checking my email and I got this email from a former professor at St. Andrews who said, look, there's a research vessel, a whale research vessel, circumnavigating the globe. They're stopping in the Maldives and they're stopping in Sri Lanka. See if you can get on, right? And in my mind, all I heard was, get on. That's all I heard, right? So I got super excited. I started writing to the CEO and I was like, I'd really like to get on. You're coming to Sri Lanka. Like, please, give me a chance. I want to be a marine biologist and it'd be so amazing. And of course, because we didn't have Wi-Fi in our pockets, right? Like I had to wait full 24 hours, went back to the internet cafe the next day, excitedly pressed the button, heard the beep, 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 beep of the dial-up internet. Out comes the email, and there we go, right? I'm excited. I've got a response, but it says, thank you for your email, but we're really sorry we don't have an opportunity for you. And I was like, what? Like, this is ridiculous. So, admittedly, I wrote to the CEO every day for 3 months until they let me on. But let me just put this in context, right? Like I wasn't being a spoiled brat. I wasn't like demanding that they let me on. I was bargaining, right? I was telling them what I had, what my capacity was, what my skills were, and what my dreams were. And I was basically helping them buy into this journey that I wanted to be on and giving them the chance to be part of it. And I will tell you today, they're very happy that they are part of it. But at the time, I think they were just concerned that I wouldn't stop. So so I get on board, and so they say, okay, fine. You know what? You can join us in the Maldives, but if you can be there in 24 hours, right? So they set me up with this challenge as if like I wouldn't make it, but that was foolish because I was there in 24 hours. I was on that doorstep at the vessel, and I was like, great, let's go. And they were like, oh wow, she's made it. Okay, great. And so that's that, right? So I'm on board, and I had told them I'll do anything. So they were obviously took that literally. I was the deckhand. I was cleaning toilets and polishing brass. So yes, my journey, my goal was to be a marine biologist, but here I am cleaning toilets and polishing brass. But it didn't matter because my goal my short-term goal at that point was to get on board that vessel, right? I needed to get on board because once I was on board, I could prove myself, right? Like that was my thinking, and they weren't going to throw me out in the middle of the ocean, right? So like they were kind of stuck with me, which seems like an ideal situation. So here I am, enjoying a beautiful tropical equatorial sunset, right, as a deckhand. And but this moment, this leap of faith that I took really was kind of key to kind of where I am today. It was such a big turning point. So I'm going to tell you this little story because I think it really is such an important part of who I am. But really, like, I would not be here today if not for this moment in time. So I worked really hard in the Maldives, and they were like, you know what, you're great, you work hard, you'll do anything, like literally clean toilets and polish brass. I mean, you can't really be bad at that, right? And so they were like, we'll keep you on, come work with us in Sri Lanka. And I was like, this is awesome, right? Still a deckhand though. So we go to Sri Lanka, and what we were doing on this vessel was we were dropping underwater microphones into the water called hydrophones, eavesdropping on sperm whales, tracking them using their sounds, the really noisy creatures. And then when we found them, we'd take these little biopsy samples that would be able to tell us about the toxicology of the ocean environment, right? So, on this, so then at the same time, we always had someone up on deck on watch, right? So, that day, this particular day that's really important to my story, it was the day I was standing up on deck, looking out for signs of life. And you can see it was like this. It was beautiful, flat, calm, right? Like not even really much of a ripple, sweet, like just perfect conditions, absolutely sweltering hot because obviously there's no wind, right? And I knew what I was looking for. So these sperm whales are great because they have one blowhole on the nostril, which is on the left-hand sides of their heads. So when they exhale, it kind of goes off onto the left-hand side, right? The blow or the spout, as we'd call it. So they're very easy to spot in the distance. And I was hearing the cacophony of the sounds, right, around us because we played on loudspeaker. And I knew there was like a lot of them, and I knew they were somewhere close, right? So now I'm like really desperate to see these animals, right? And my shift is coming to an end, and I'm like, no, I'm going to find these guys before my shift is over. And I'm getting increasingly frustrated because I can see the time is running out, and there's no sperm whales around, right? But then I saw this, right? This tall, powerful vertical blow that just like boomed all the way to the sky, right? As far as I could tell, it was like this giant thing. And I knew immediately it had to come from like a massive animal. So I'm really excited, right? Like not this low bushy blow off the left-hand side. It's this gigantic tower of vapor, right? And so I'm like excited, grab my walkie-talkie, call down to my captain. I'm like, Bob, we have to go 11 o'clock, 2 kilometers. Let's go quick. And he's like, he's very calm. And he goes, why? And I'm like, I think it's a blue whale. And he says, okay. And he turns the vessel. We're now going in this direction towards this supposed blue whale. I'm fretting because I'm the deckhand, and I have now derailed a well-planned expedition, sending them off in a completely different direction to see a species that was not our focal species, that may not even have been what I thought it was, right? So lots of things could have gone wrong there. And I'm like trying not to lose sight of this animal in the distance, and I'm trying not to blink, impossible. And then I'm like, am I going crazy because I'm not seeing one blow, but I'm seeing 6 blows? And it's like this area, like this tiny area, like the size of a football pitch, right? And I'm like, this is nuts. This animal's like, why are they so like, they can travel 70% of our globe, but they're just in this tiny spot hanging out, right? So then I'm like, okay, I'm fresh out of undergrad, right? Remember that. So I'm like, oh, I know all the answers, because that's how you feel when you come out of undergrad, right? You have all the answers. So I'm like, oh, my textbooks and my professors, they told me that large whales, like blue whales in this case, go to cold waters to feed, and then they do these long migrations to warm waters to breed and calve, right? So I'm like, that's it, right? Like I'm really excited because I'm convinced I'm going to be the first person in the world to ever see a blue whale mating or giving birth, right? Like, so that's it, right? Like, my career is set. I'm thinking, why is it so difficult for everyone, right? Like, look at this amazing moment. So standing in the front of the boat, I'm like literally hanging off, wanting to be the first person. And we're getting closer and closer and closer. And it's not what I expected to see, right? Like, I would know if they were mating. They were not. There was definitely no calves. There was these 6 whales in this tight area, but they were just kind of hanging out pretty casually, right? So I was like, okay, cool. Like, thanks, but like, what's going on? And now I'm really nervous because I'm like, okay, now I've derailed the expedition and nothing specific is happening for us to document. And then I said, oh, you know what, can we just hang around a little longer because now we're here, you know, like, and my captain says, yeah, sure. And I was like, great. And that's when I saw this, right? This is a pile of blue whale poop, right? I mean, I'll give you like a millisecond to really admire it. It's pretty damn beautiful, I can say that. But I mean, not only is it spectacular to witness, right? Like, wow. But it was also my eureka moment, right? Like, it's my eureka moment because here's the deal. The fact that these animals were pooping meant they were feeding somewhere close, right? They're not going to Antarctica and feeding and then pooping in Sri Lanka. That doesn't make sense. So feeding somewhere close, right? Which meant like they'd adapted to feeding in these warm tropical waters. But like I said, professors, textbooks, everything that we knew up to that point told me that they had to go to cold waters to feed. And they were only going to breed and calve in warm waters, right? And here I was finding something really radically different, right? It went against everything we knew. I was so excited, right? And the key thing here I want you to remember is inspiration comes from everywhere, right? Be open to it. Expect the unexpected. You never know. My career was started by a pile of poop, right? You could just being curious and being open to whatever's going on around you. You never know what will inspire you, and you never know what will set you off in your trajectory, right? Don't poo 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 is what I always say. So at this point, right, like I'm like, okay, great. So now I want to build a research project, right? I think it's really important for me to just dedicate my life to these whales. Like, nobody's talking about them. Most people in Sri Lanka didn't know we had whales in our waters. So I write off to some professors and I say, hey, you know, like I got this. This is really interesting. I think there's something special happening here. Would you be able to guide me and help me and, you know, to build a project, right? Because I'm young. I have no experience. And I got responses, right? But all of them, like in a nutshell, basically, they just said, this is amazing, right? Can you get us a research permit so we can bring our teams and come to your country and do the work, right? Okay, so at this point, I was like, no, this is not right, okay? This is something I discovered. Why shouldn't I be part of the research? Why shouldn't I be doing the research? So I, you know, very politely refused their support at that point. It took me a few more years to save up enough money to start building the project. And, you know, 5 years, I had to figure out everything on my own, work on a shoestring budget. And that was like the first time, though, I realized that I was being judged by where I came from rather than who or what I was capable of doing, right? And that is something that's really stuck with me. It's how we judge people and what we expect from people based on where they come from, but not really on their performance or what they can actually do or what they're going to contribute when we're talking about saving the world. And this is really important. It's something that I've, you know, worked on and started talking about a lot, right? This idea of parachute science or colonial conservation, where in our case, in my case, you know, you have researchers from the global north coming to the global south, doing research and leaving, but not investing in the infrastructure or local capacity, right? The problem with this model is that it's not sustainable, right? It also means it cripples long-term local conservation efforts. And in the end, you know, the priorities of those projects are they're not priorities of the country quite often. They're just priorities of the researchers. So they're driven by the outsiders' motives, their assumptions, and that can actually create an unequal power imbalance between those from the outside and those on the inside, right? But what I can say is the more I've talked about this, the more I realize it is a problem across the globe. It's a problem in a lot of different kinds of scientific communities, from genomics to remote sensing. It's relevant to the satellite work that, you know, we're talking about and celebrating here, and I'll go into that a bit more. It's relevant in medicine. It happens in every sphere, but we need to do better if we do want to make a change in the world, right? And that's really important for us to remember. So I want you to hold on to these thoughts as I move forward with this talk. So anyway, the whales, right? They're cool, right? And they're amazing, and so we have them, and they, you know, I've discovered that they have different dialects, that they feed on different things, that they have different behaviors to blue whales in other ocean basins. They clearly like the tropics. They're the only non-migratory blue whale population in the world, right? I don't blame them. But unfortunately, in the 60s, there was illegal Soviet whaling. So these Soviets would be heading off to Antarctica to hunt whales, but en route they realized there were blue whales in this patch of the ocean, and it's a limited patch, right? So the range of this particular population of blue whales is, you know, the Maldives on the south, the east coast of Sri Lanka on the east, and then, you know, the Arabian Sea and stuff like that. So very, very tiny area. And they realized, you know what, we can just get some whales out of here, right? And so over 4 seasons, which amounts to about 60 days over 4 years, they actually took out 1,294 blue whales from this patch. And that's the impact of that we still don't fully understand, but we know it has impacted the numbers that we see today. But the good thing is that whaling is not the biggest problem for whales across our globe, right? Today, there are much bigger threats. And the biggest one faced by the animals, particularly in our oceans, are ship strike. So this is a typical scene on the south coast of Sri Lanka. You can see a ship and you can see a whale diving, right? It's a massive highway and you've got ships and whales in the same space. And so this is some research that I've actually been working on for about a decade now, reminding us that conservation is a marathon and not a sprint, right? Here's a map of global ship traffic, and you'll see the yellow lines are like the big yellow noodles are the densest, the busiest shipping highways in the world. So if you focus on the northern Indian Ocean, which is where Sri Lanka is, you'll see that, you know, there's crazy highways going through off the southern coast of Sri Lanka, right? It's the main artery through the Indian Ocean. Everything from Singapore to Dubai goes through these waters, right? While global ship traffic doubled since the 70s, in this area, it quadrupled. So trade is changing and there's intense traffic going through this area. So then what we did was we took AIS data, so that's you know, ship movement data from satellites, so relevant to this kind of whole event. And we basically looked at, okay, where are the ships moving and where are the whales, right? And so you can see the red lines indicate the busiest shipping highways and zoomed in around Sri Lanka, and the black dots are where we see whales. So if you look on the south coast, which is where I do a lot of my research, there is distinct overlap between where we see the whales and where we see the ships. So sites like this shouldn't be surprising, right? This is a blue whale that came into the main harbor in Sri Lanka, wrapped on the bow of a container ship back in 2012. It was killed on impact because it showed signs of internal hemorrhaging. And so we know that's how it died. And 12 days later, we found another carcass with a massive propeller gash, right? Oftentimes, we don't see these carcasses because blue whales tend to be negatively buoyant, so their carcasses will sink. So they might get hit, but then the carcass, if it slips off the bow, it will sink to the depths of the ocean. But off California, where they have the similar problem, we've found that for every whale that gets documented, at least 10 go undocumented, right? So that means, like, if you see 2 dead, that means 20 there are probably 20 that have died in the same way. So it is a key issue, and that's something that we've been working on. And, you know, I've come up with recommendations along with all the other scientists that work with me about shifting the shipping lanes further offshore, because it'll benefit not just the whales. And that's like the key thing about conservation. The key thing about saving the planet is that 99% of it is actually managing humans. And so we have to learn to address all the issues holistically, right? So we looked at how it will benefit whale watch operators, it would benefit small-scale fishers who use these inner coastal waters, it would benefit the whales, obviously, and it would reduce ship-based pollution to coastal populations, right? So that's obviously an economic benefit in the long term. So that's great, right? But what I want to draw your attention to is, like, you know, I told you I use this AIS data, which is satellite-based data, right? But it was so difficult for me to get this archive data. So satellite data exists in our world, but sometimes there are some companies that might hold specific data, and it's incredibly expensive for us to access. Now, my colleagues in other countries in the global north can access this data because their institutions might have deals, they might have some kind of relationship with the companies, but me, in my country, where the problem is, can't access that data. So that means that if I want to do this stuff, it's more than likely that someone outside my country will use the data to make decisions on what's going on in my country, right? And that is problematic when it comes to satellite data. So something needs to change, right? We need to think about how we're using satellite data, and this is really key here. As you know, the projects are amazing. I know some of your projects are quite locally based. Some of yours are much more broad-ranging at the global scale, right? But when you're working through your projects, there are a few things I'd like you to think about. One thing is using satellite data can be very colonial, right? You could be sitting in an office in Sri Lanka right here, and you could be working on looking at data from across the globe, maybe Chile, for example, and making assumptions on what's going on there based on what you're seeing with the satellite data. The key thing is you need to have a team on the ground that you work with. You have to build equal partnerships so that everyone is benefiting, but you need people to ground truth. You need to make sure that the narrative is not a narrative that's far removed from the reality, but a narrative that truly understands what is going on in that place that you are looking at, right? That's really, really important. The other thing is we need to create more accessibility around all this data that's available, but accessibility is not about saying, here's a bunch of satellite data, now go use it. We have to understand that it takes a certain expertise to actually be able to use that data. Can we build the tools so that everyone can actually use the data? Can we give, how do we train people so it's not just dumping data on people and being like, oh, we have a collaboration. Yeah, I went to this country and I worked and I gave them the data. No, here, I trained them so that they can start looking at the data themselves. That is really key. And I would like everyone to think about that as you build projects and as you work with satellite data and you're working so remotely and able to look at what's going on across the world. How do you do it better? How do you make sure that you're doing it in a way that, people on the ground are part of solving the problem and people on the ground are part of the team in a very, very equitable way. If we circle back to the ocean, 70% of our coastlines are in the developing world, but representation at the global stage is next to nothing. It's negligible, right? And that's obviously problematic because it's like we're making decisions about, the oceans as a whole, with very few people from a very small part of the world at the table, right? And it's like, making decisions about a problem that affects both men and women by talking to only men, right? It's the same thing if we're not being inclusive, and we need to be inclusive if we want to solve the challenges that we face in our oceans. The ocean is 70% of our planet. Our team needs to be gigantic if we really want to try to drive that change. And it's possible. I want you to know that what I'm not saying you can only work in your own backyard. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you can build partnerships in a way that's mutually respectful. So this is my friend and my colleague Shane Guerrero. He's a sperm researcher who works in Dominica. And he collaborates with me on our sperm whale work in Sri Lanka. Why? Because I have all this amazing knowledge about the whales in our waters, the waters around us. I have extensive decades of knowledge about that, but I don't have the technical capacity. And by bringing Shane on board, he knows that that's his spot. He can contribute, and then he guides our students to actually learn these skills so that we have a new generation of very diverse people coming into the fray, working in these spaces. And this partnership there's an understanding that we talk about capacity building, and capacity building is always this one-sided approach, right? It's the outsider coming and gifting, but capacity is built both ways, and there's to be openness around that in all the work that we do, right? If we want to make sure we're working equitably and inclusively. And I also want people who work locally, on the other hand, to realize that being local is so powerful, right? You can do so much and drive so much change by staying put in a community. And I'll give you 4 examples from my own life from the last 2 years. This seal might throw you off. It's a juvenile elephant seal, and you're probably thinking, oh, you've been to Antarctica. No, I haven't. But this is a juvenile elephant seal that rocked up on our coastline here in Sri Lanka. Obviously very lost, right? The thing is, people started to spot it, and they reported it to me. Nobody knew what it was at first because we've never seen a seal in our waters, right? Makes no sense. And then, people started getting freaked out because this animal was obviously like molting. It was like dumping fur blobs everywhere. And it looked like it had like some kind of disease. So I was able to go to these sites because I live here in no time, went out, and I was able to look at what was going on and then start sharing with people and telling people, no, you know what? This animal is molting. This is normal. It'll be here for about a month and then it will go off on its journey, right? I don't know where it went. I hope it's safe. But it went off on its journey after exactly a month. But the point is, that was such a great opportunity for me to share my knowledge. And I want you to remember that on this long journey, there's no point accumulating knowledge if you're not going to give it away, right? There is no point just holding it in. I say when I die, I don't want it to end. So for me, the goal is to like empty my brain as much as I can, right? And so share. We're really privileged to be in, I should speak for myself. I feel really privileged to go on the adventures I do, to do the work I do, to see the things I see. And I know that not everybody gets that. So for me, it's really important to make sure other people can at least vicariously experience what I'm experiencing, but also making sure they have the opportunity to make the best decisions for the oceans. Because I've shared so much that they've fallen in love, that I've shared so much that they know how to do better. And that's on me to do better as well. Another example was when, when the COVID lockdown started last year. Obviously, it's still a problem when we're concerned about the daily wage workers. And I was really concerned about the small-scale fishing folk in Sri Lanka who are daily wage workers, like this gentleman over here, right? And I was, how do we find out what's going on? Are they safe? Are they getting what they need? What are their challenges? And so I built a project. I managed to get a grant, and then because I'm local and because there's now, there's more people than ever before. Like when I started off, nobody knew what a marine biologist did. Today, there's more people than ever before in my country who want to be marine biologists, who want to be marine conservationists, which is amazing. So this was this great opportunity for me to then hire 14 research assistants from right across the country so that when things were safe, I was able to deploy them, and they went off into their communities and worked with these fishers. And, working with people is tricky because they only talk if they trust someone. And so we were sending people back into their own communities to ask the questions. And so that really helps the science. And that's so important for us to remember that local aspect is how you kind of can actually start to address the issues by understanding truly what's going on. But without investing in that space, it's very difficult for you to ever really get the right answers. And then we had a massive pilot whale standing, 100 pilot whales washed up on our beach, just a few kilometers from where I live, again in lockdown. But again, I was called by the authorities and I was sent to the location. You can see the community there, they were out in numbers, trying to save these whales. One of the few little things, right? Again, sharing my knowledge, but being inclusive with who you share it with and understanding there are people who actually, they may not be scientists, but they actually have a lot of knowledge. These guys were out there and they knew how to handle the whales because, they'd been doing it from morning. But they weren't aware that the blowhole, the nostril, was on the top of their head, and that we shouldn't obstruct that if we want to actually save the whale, right? So by telling them that little piece of information, by explaining them, to them that, hey, if we can do this, it'll be great. In the end, these heroes basically saved 96 of the 100 pilot whales. And then recently, at the end of May, I don't know if anyone, I'm sure people have heard about it, we had a massive marine disaster when the MV Express Pearl caught fire just 10 kilometers off our western coastline. In the background of this photograph, if you look carefully, you'll see buildings, right? So it's very close to the coastline. It caught fire, and there was chemical spills into the water and containers and nurdles, right? Like these tiny plastic pellets that are like the basic foundation of every plastic that we use, right? They're these tiny little white pebbles, and they started spilling across our beaches, right? And then they were caught in our currents and they were moving around the coastline. We were in lockdown, so we couldn't deploy people to, volunteers to go clean up. We couldn't get them involved. The authorities took charge of that, the Navy actually. But people were getting really restless, and I thought, how do we get them involved? Because they were upset, right? Understandably, but they were trapped in their houses. But people wanted to be involved. So I thought, you know what? I need to know from a scientific point of view, how do we how do we, where are these pellets going, right? Where are these nurdles washing up? So I built a nurdle tracker online where people could submit their photographs from their local beach of where the nurdles were washing up. And that really gave us a sense of how they were moving around the coastline. But that also allowed us to then verify the particle tracking models that we'd built, right? Like this high-flown science. And we needed the ground truthing. And so we were able to do that, bring that together. We had this amazing idea of what was going on, which current captured the nurdles. When should we expect nurdles to be on certain beaches, right? And so that was really powerful. But at the same time, I wanted to do more, right? I wanted to help in the recovery efforts. So I have this, luckily got this extensive network of scientists. And through those networks, I built a bigger network, and we're collaborating together to do some science on like understanding the contaminant levels of these nurdles. How do we get people in the recovery efforts? What should we tell them about handling them? We discovered that a lot of them were burnt. The burnt ones were over a very limited coastline, but still they had to be treated differently to how we were dealing with the normal nurdles, right? So it allowed me to build a collaboration with scientists in the US who have expertise in doing this kind of work, my expertise on the ground, bring that together, and we've got a publication, we've got extensive work, we've got another piece of research coming up that's feeding right back into the recovery efforts, right? So being local has been so precious, and for me, I'm so grateful that I've been in the country for all these incidents, so I could actually be of service, be of help, because I've always wanted my life to be useful to more than just myself. So, you can tell my story. It started off, I was this young, bright-eyed kid who wanted to be a marine biologist. That's all I could think of because it didn't exist and I wanted to do it and I knew I could and I had the belief. And then I discovered the blue whales, this unique population, and I was so, that was my direction. And now, it's blossomed, it's broadened out, and I can see all these questions that need answering. But because I've created a very inclusive space and allowed people to come in and provided training and, all kinds of skills building, that means there's so many more people now who can help to address these questions. And that to me is so powerful, right? Now we're a team and this team needs to grow. And my goal is to, have nurture that next generation of really diverse ocean heroes that can cover that 70% of coastlines that don't get represented in our everyday conversations about the oceans. Because, so I'm going to run back quickly through as I wrap up my talk and tell you, just a few tips. Some of them I've already talked about, but some I'm going to bring up. Things like, self-belief, so necessary. If you want a career, if you want to know how to drive change, it's really important that you have self-belief, not self-limiting beliefs. Be curious at all times. Build your teams wisely. So one of the things is you have your teams that you work with on projects, but you need to have your own personal team. The people who help you look after your mental health, help you look after your welfare, people who are there to hug you when you need it, people who are there to be like, yeah, I think that's a really bad idea. You might want to rethink that. People who are honest with you, who can help you be your most authentic self. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? If you've committed to this, you're going to be doing this for a long time. So today, you might win, you may not win, but it's a moment in time, right? And just if you don't win, doesn't mean you're not going to win in the future. It doesn't mean you haven't learned anything. You've been on an immense journey through this, Hack the Planet competition. And you've learned so much that you are going to be much better at it the next time, right? So don't give up. Remember that these moments, if you win, the awards are just high fives on a long journey. You don't stop just because you win something. You take it, you accept it, you appreciate it because it helps you to, obviously move forward. But at the same time, you keep going. Inspiration comes from everywhere. Never forget that. It could even be a pile of poop. Scaling up effort, right? We want to scale up effort. The ocean is large. How do we scale up effort? It's by being inclusive. It's by being equitable. It's about making sure everything's accessible, that everyone can be part of the solution, not just part of the problem. Understanding what your mission is really important to try to think about. What is my mission? There's two ways you can go about it, right? Like either you want to do something because your career is really important, you want to have tenure track, you want to write papers for science and nature, or you want to save the planet, right? Like those are the two big tracks that you'll find. And that will determine how you conduct your science, right? If you want to save the planet, you're going to make sure that you bring everybody on board. You're going to be inclusive and, create these giant teams. But if it's only about your career, then you're probably not going to be, right? So I want you to think about what drives you, what's your mission, and where do you want to go, and what do you really want, right? Do you want change for this world? Seek to serve. There's a lot of joy in serving. I can tell you, as a conservationist, your life is about service, and people will try to dissuade you, but it's a fantastic journey, and it is so fulfilling. Share your journey authentically, right? Like, the ups and downs. Talk to people about what's going on. Share like your story, because you never know who's listening, and you might empower people through your own journey by saying, this happened, it was awesome, I won this award, but this other time, like, things didn't work out, it was kind of crappy. But that's the authentic self that you need to be sharing if you're going to share at all. Share what you learn, recognize your privilege, right? We are privileged to kind of have this opportunity to do some of this fun stuff that we do. I think I have such a great life, definitely the best life in the world. So therefore, like, I want everyone to feel like they can be part of it. And equal partnerships. There's no success without building equitable partnerships, as seeing everyone as part of your team, and knowing that everyone has a skill to bring to the table, and knowing that if you work outside your own home, it's actually a privilege and not a right. And just to close up, I want to say, talent is equally distributed, but is not. And in the end, I think the solution to our ocean's greatest challenges probably trapped in the mind of some kid out there who may not be on our radar right now, right? And so I see my job as basically trying to find that person or those people, and to basically create opportunities so I can find them, and just opening the door so they can just like sprint past me, right, and work their magic. Because in the end, if we truly want to save our oceans, every coastline needs a local hero. Thank you.
Asha, thank you so much. I don't think I've ever been more inspired by a talk in any sort of in any part of my life. So that's absolutely remarkable, and thank you. And I'm sure that all of our participants will be massively interested in hearing, in having heard what you've got to say. I just wanted to ask you just a couple of things, actually. I mean, climate change and the loss of marine biodiversity and extracting, resource extraction from the oceans. It's such a massive problem at the moment. But there's quite an important meeting going on in Glasgow in a couple of weeks' time. And I just, if you had one message that you would give to world leaders about what the real challenges are that you see in the marine ecosystem, what would it be?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, I'd say the biggest challenge for the oceans is really overfishing. And it's really the commercial fisheries that are unregulated, that happen on the high seas, that are subsidized, and that's what allows them to actually happen at the scale that they do. I would say that that's kind of the biggest problem in the oceans, and that's one that we'd want to address. And it's complicated, right? It's not like just about extraction. Of the problem of overfishing is, yes, extracting too much fish, but our fish stocks are dwindling because of climate change. In the Indian Ocean, we've lost about 20% of our phytoplankton because of warming oceans, right? That's the base of every food web. So if you have less phytoplankton, you have less of absolutely everything else, so less fish. So the thing is, our fish stocks are getting impacted in so many different ways, and it's not just, it's a multiple whammy, and that's the issue. And so I would say, yeah, overfishing is a huge issue that we need to address, particularly from the commercial side, understanding that there are sustainable ways to do it. So it's not about shutting down fisheries. There are sustainable, small-scale fisheries that can be supported, but also understanding that there's a whole lot of other problems that link to that need to be looked at.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, let's hope some of them are listening. I've just on another point. You've said before, and you've been quoted in the National Geographic saying that you are always too young and too female, and I think that's a sort of sad reflection of our times, but it's definitely reflected in UNESCO estimates that 30% of the world's researchers only 30% of world researchers are female. So I'm just wondering what drives you to break those barriers, and how can we be more equitable in this sector?
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, when I was first told I was too young and too female, I was really upset because I was actually young, right, at the time. But now I'm a little older, and I'm like, I want to be too young and too female for life, right? Like, that's kind of one of my personal goals, right? But I think for me personally, like, I don't know any different, and I think that's what it is, right? Like, I just believe so strongly that if I'm not at the table, right, like, certain things won't happen. I know I'm willing to voice things that a lot of people aren't, and people say, oh, how do you have that courage? And I just say, you know what, I ask myself, what's the worst that can happen? And often if you ask that of yourself and you reflect on it, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be, right? And if we don't take our seats at the table, nobody's giving us a seat at the table, right? And that's really important for everyone. You know, no matter your age, no matter your background, no matter your gender, no matter anything, you have a right to take that seat at the table, right? And I think we have to make sure that people feel like they do. I absolutely love what I do, but I really, like, it's also been a process of evolution, right? When I started out, it was very much a mission of myself, but it's evolved into this mission that's much larger, because I feel like I've kind of cracked through some barriers. And so if I'm going to break those barriers, if I'm going to trailblaze, I'm going to make these paths that are so wide that anyone else that sees themselves in me and believes in me or wants to do what I do or wants to do better, which I hope they do, they can just surpass me, right? And that's the key thing for me. So I'm very driven by, like, retiring young, right? And, like, watching everybody do magic, all these young people who I totally believe in, just running right past and doing amazing things. And how can we be more equitable? I mean, simple. We need to get more people at the table. We have to make sure that it's not based on tokenism, right? We're not like, oh, we need 2 women for the 8 men we have on this panel, therefore we're going to get them, tick, tick, right? We need to move away from tokenism. That's rubbish. But we need to understand that we need a diversity of opinions, right? We need ages, backgrounds, genders, whatever. We need a diversity of opinions. We need to be more open. We have to be more courageous and stop being scared of having women in the room, right? Like, that's the key thing. We can't be afraid to have a different voice, an opinion that's different, a viewpoint that's different. It doesn't make any sense. Obviously, I could talk about this forever.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And like I say, most inspirational talk, and it's been absolutely wonderful to have you here today. So Dr. Asha de Vos, thank you very much for being part of that planet journey.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, and good luck to all the finalists on your journey.
Excellent. Well, the good news is that the judges have finished their deliberations, so the votes are cast, and there's a consensus, I understand, on the winners of Hack the Planet 2021. So it's time for Chris Garbanz again to, I think, join me here. Chris has been chairing the discussion amongst the judges. So Chris, how did the discussion go? Was it a lively discussion?
Hi Tim. Yeah, it was. I mean, I've judged quite a few of these things, and it certainly was quite a heated debate. I think everyone was so impressed with all of the finalists, the team, the passion, the innovation, you know, and the absolute sort of effectively, you know, depth charges that were trying to be achieved. You know, some amazing ambition from some really smart entrepreneurs, and it was really enjoyable to hear, and it was incredible, you know, all these people trying to fix the world's greatest problem. I agree with Asha that overfishing is the biggest challenge, and we saw some ideas around that. But in terms of where we netted out, if you want me to go into the winner.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we'll do, if we can, is do it in reverse order.
3, 2, 1. Yeah.
3, 2, 1. So that the team in third place will win £5,000 in cash plus £7,500 worth of a data allowance provided by Planet, and $10,000 worth of credits for cloud computing services from Amazon Web Services. So Chris, who is our third place team?
And I think just to build on that, I think that, you know, all of the judges, and particularly some of them that are providing some of the added services, would be liking to talk to all of the finalists about how they might be able to support if they win or they don't win. But in third place, we really liked loop recyclers, the innovation there, and the vision to really try and they got fireworks even. Recyclable fireworks are going off on Zoom. Fantastic. Yeah. The judges like the number one, the problem they were trying to solve, hugely important. They like the scale of the ambition, utilizing Internet of Things, utilizing data monitoring, and, you know, really trying to encourage and solve such a big problem. So congratulations to that team and vision. In second place, again, you know, massive ambition to try and, you know, create a platform and you know, a data set that was really going to be transformational in terms of understanding and protecting biodiversity. You know, we talked a lot about, you know, how would this actually be implemented, the work that needed to be done to put this in place. You know, but we all agreed this was about, you know, really having a big idea and, you know, really trying to solve a big problem. So in second place, the judges voted for the Terangi team from Malaysia for Project Martha. Well done, everyone. Fantastic toolbox, and we hope that works, and hope in, you know, a year's time we'll be able to see that really working. And then the winner, which you know, superb presentation, and, you know, hugely important in terms of monitoring what they call the awesome product, was Plastic Eye, and, you know, how are they going to utilize that technology to monitor all the plastic. So well done, James and Lauren, great presentation. Really, I'm loving the virtual fireworks.
The ticket is
really well received, you know, hugely important, and you know, I think that could be transformative. And I just wanted to also, on top of that, just a special judges mention to Snapper. We really liked that. We thought it was a great initiative. I think there'll be contact from some of the judges about wanting to help support that with their direct businesses. And it was a superb presentation, you know, really, I think Emma was her name, if that's right, did a fantastic job presenting that. But all round, everything was great, but hats off to Plastic Eye. Well done, and good luck. I think you can say something now, James.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely chuffed to have won the competition. Lauren sadly can't join us now for collecting the prize, but obviously it's been a joy working with her, and she has been working on this problem for quite a while. So really good to have her as part of the team. And a big thank you to Mike Lauten as well for really helping us pull the pitch together. I think just what I'd say is that it's been, you know, the whole kind of Hack the Planet program has been an absolute pleasure. For the you know, the kind of information program that was put on and run by the Catapult and the Commonwealth was really interesting. Really great speakers coming in, you know, the likes of Emily Penn and the like coming in to really inspire us, and indeed, you know, Asha at the end as well to pile on the inspiration and the energy there. And I think a big thanks to everybody we've had conversations with. So, you know, with our fellow competitors, with the mentors, and then with, you know, other kind of companies and colleagues we've been introduced to. This idea for Plastic Eye, I think it was maybe buried somewhere in the initial you know, kind of pitch we made, but it's definitely kind of come out and flourished through conversations with the mentors and our fellow competitors, etc. So yeah, I think Plastic Eye is definitely the offspring of Hack the Planet competition. So yeah, just a really big thanks again, and yeah, really looking forward, as Asha kind of said, you know, this is a high five, and this is really kind of where the work starts. So we're going to get stuck in now and try to make this the best it can be. But thank you very much, everyone. Cheers. Thanks.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Nick, are we saying anything else, or are we done? Tim?
I think it's over to me now.
Okay.
So, listen, that has been amazing. I've just loved watching every moment of it, and it's been a real honor to be a part of it. Thank you all very much for tuning in today for this grand finale of the inaugural Hack the Planet competition. I'm truly delighted to commend and congratulate all 6 finalists who presented their extraordinary solutions today with so much energy and passion. Your commitment and drive to finding solutions to climate emergency and ocean sustainability challenges that we face make this competition really and truly worthwhile. My heartfelt congratulations to James and Lauren with Plastic Eye on your outstanding achievement of winning this. The Commonwealth Secretariat is proud to support you and indeed all the finalists on your journey to hack solutions for the sustainability of the planet. On behalf of the Commonwealth Secretariat, I would also like to thank our partners, Satellite Applications Catapult, who have worked tirelessly to make this competition a reality since our first discussion on it in early 2020. Also, our event agency, Outsourced Events, and our sponsors and supporters, without whom this competition would not be possible: Planet, Maxar, Amazon Web Services, and Deloitte. You have all supported the competition generously with your expertise, time, and resources, engaging with participants throughout the Knowledge Exchange program, particularly. My sincere appreciation to all of our judges today: Chris Garbanz, Angelique Poupineau, Andrew Zolly, Angelique Brathwaite, Phil Cooper, and Laura Bentz. As busy entrepreneurs and investors yourselves, your willingness to share your insights today has not only helped us to choose our winner and runners-up, but has imparted that hard-earned wisdom of experience to all our finalists. And I'm sure they will find helpful as they continue their journey. Also, a huge thank you to Dr. Asha de Vos for her truly inspiring keynote address today. Knowing that there are people like you making a difference in this world gives me hope. As we heard from the remarks today, the ocean is facing huge pressures, and these impacts directly on all of us as we rely on the ocean for life and livelihoods. For the Commonwealth's 54 countries, 47 of which have a marine coastline, covering a third of national waters globally, there is a pressing need for action. This is why Commonwealth countries have committed to work together on tackling ocean challenges through the Commonwealth Blue Charter. When we kickstarted this competition on Earth Day earlier this year, we were looking for early stage, innovative, impactful, and scalable ideas that will tackle threats linked to ocean degradation and the climate crisis facing communities around the world, and harnessing the power of satellite technology. And we wanted to hear from those throughout the Commonwealth facing these ocean and climate impacts on the front line. I'm sure you will agree with me that the 6 finalists we've been privileged to hear from today have succeeded in rising to this challenge, developing the seeds of some potentially great solutions. We may be in challenging and uncertain times, but there are real opportunities for positive change. And through this competition, we've given the change makers a voice. Because the Commonwealth is all about unlocking people's potential, creating the best conditions for talents to thrive, sharing experiences, and learning from what those around us do. We do this by collaborating on opportunities such as the Hack the Planet competition, by providing platforms for your ideas and hopefully inspiring many others in the process. To our finalists, I hope that this competition will be a springboard for many successes for you in future. Being inspired by your solutions, we are hoping to run such a competition again. Once again, my warmest congratulations to all the finalists, and thank you all again for tuning in.